chat, let me set this up for you. So this is a debate between two transgender influencers. We have, what is it? Nominal Naomi. Took me a while to read the name. Nominal Naomi. That's the person you see in the bigger window. And in the really small window, we have Kelly Cardigan. And they're both debating trans issues, basically. And somehow, at one point in this debate, it becomes like Kelly Cardigan defending slavery in a way. It's really fucking weird. You'll see what I mean when we get to that point. But we're going to listen to this while we play the game. So let me go ahead and start it. Here we go.
First off, just like, thanks so much for agreeing to do this debate. I know that not every...
Wait, is this on 2.5 speed or something? Oh, I guess she just speaks fast. Okay, never mind.
Everybody is willing to come in and like defend their ideas in the free marketplace of ideas. So really appreciate that. If you want to give yourself like a quick shout out, you are absolutely welcome to do that.
Yeah, so my name is Kelly Cadigan. You can follow me on all my socials. They're all Kelly_Cadigan. Cadigan is
Let me make sure my pause and play is working right.
You heckin' simpy.
All right, it is cool.
New Moon 89 X10.
Thank you for those bits. I do appreciate it. Chiro in the chat is saying, I've seen this. I've seen this too. I've seen this debate already too. And oh my God, it is it is something else. All right. I'll just say that this debate is, it's pretty interesting. Kelly is basically a wannabe Blair White. She does kind of come off that way. She really does come off as like, I want to be the popular like trans woman who's like conservative. It does kind of come off that way. Very much like an imitation, a cheap imitation of Blair White. I do agree.
I'm on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I don't really use my Snapchat anymore. And yeah, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. Can I say adult content?
You can keep that a little bit on the kind of DL. Just mentioning that is enough.
That's all I need to say. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So yeah, I kind of want to just started with some of like the disagreements based off of your response video. I think that'd be a kind of a good way to highlight what some of those main points of contention were, and just try to like dispel what those are. So
absolutely,
I saw that the first thing was that you really took issue with the pediatric cancer analogy, where you said that. So first of all, I don't know why we're comparing cancer to being transgender. I just feel like it's not the same at all, but whatever. And like, obviously I recognize that pediatric cancer and, gender dysphoria are very different things. But this is an analogy. I think you might fundamentally misunderstand the purpose of my analogy, so I can just explain my position like a lot more explicitly. So
sure.
I have a fundamental moral belief in reducing harm, reducing suffering in this world. Do you also share this kind of general moral belief?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, awesome. So as an instantiation of this principle of reducing harm, reducing suffering, if we have a body of medical doctors, scientists, and researchers who are establishing evidence-based guidelines which are shown to reduce harm.
I mean, the chat says, I've seen Kelly's videos. She doesn't have the Blair White charm. I'll be honest, I haven't watched any of Kelly's videos, so I can't really comment on that, but I'll take your word for it.
To reduce suffering based off of this risk-benefit analysis, then I support that treatment being available to those who would benefit from it. And so because of that, instantiation of this belief, the evidence-based guidelines show that chemotherapy reduces harm, suffering, and death in kids with pediatric cancer. So we should provide it. The evidence-based guidelines show that antidepressants reduce harm, suffering, and suicide in teens with depression. So we should provide it.
Do you not think there's a line there, like when it comes to what we're talking about?
Yeah, there absolutely is a line. I think that the line is drawn at harm. And once again, because the evidence-based guidelines show that gender-affirming care reduces harm, suffering, and suicide in teens with gender dysphoria, we should provide it.
Right, but even just like...
Okay, I want to chime in here because, like, I've commented in the past, like, people have asked me about, like, gender-affirming care, like, when it comes to, like, teenagers and stuff like this. And I'm going to preface this by saying, like, if you disagree with my stance, it's totally fine. But I've kind of, like, in the past, like, people have asked me, like, where I stand on that. And it's been one of those things where I've, like, said, I think I need to do a little bit more research on the topic for me to understand it, right? Because I didn't have a firm stance, but I have been taking the time to do a little bit of research in my free time to kind of see where I stand on it. And I think there's a lot of like misconceptions, right, about gender affirming care for like people suffering from gender dysphoria when it comes to minors. I think a lot of people think that like, the idea is that a minor can just go to a doctor and be like, yo, I'm suffering from gender dysphoria, give me some HRT. And it doesn't exactly work that way. Like there's this whole process, my understanding, that kids have to go through when they're like trying to like get, you know, treatment for like gender dysphoria. Like for example, a lot of what I've seen is that at minimum, like when somebody comes to a doctor and they're like, I think I'm suffering from gender dysphoria, they have to go to therapy to confirm that diagnosis, right? So like they're actually confirming, it's not just a case of like, hey, I think I'm gender dysphoric, give me HRT. It's like, I think I'm gender dysphoric. Okay, let's put you through therapy so we can confirm that diagnosis, right? And so once you've gone through that diagnosis, usually it's like a 6-month period at minimum. Then they'll say, okay, it looks like you do suffer from gender dysphoria. We're going to start you on puberty blockers, and we're going to put you on puberty blockers for a period of time. And then after that, if it still comes to the same conclusion that yes, you are indeed suffering from gender dysphoria, then we're going to go ahead and put you on HRT. Now, some trans people have gone on record to say, hey, when it comes to, you know, kids taking HRT, and like, you know, the parents are not like involved in that process, like maybe the parents are not accepting of their child being trans, then people will say, well, if the parents refuse to let the kid seek treatment, then, you know, we need to help them. I don't agree with that. And I know some people will probably take issue with that, but I do think that like the parents need to be involved in the treatment the same way they would be involved with any other treatment. And I do think like some people will take issue with that and say, well, tipster, like if a parent is preventing their kid from seeking treatment that's good for them, then that's like abuse. And we need to help those kids. Like when the parents refuse, like parents that are not accepting of trans kids is just, there's some issues we can't fix, all right? You can try to educate people, right? You can try to educate people to make them more informed on these things, but I don't think the answer to these problems is let's give treatment to kids without their parents' knowledge. I disagree with that part of it. I'm 100% in favor of like parents having, you know, being informed about the situation and saying, okay, we're okay with our kid getting this treatment. Go ahead and give our kid this treatment, but I'm not okay with parents are refusing to give their kids this treatment, so we're going to give them the treatment without their parents' knowledge. I 100% disagree with that part of it. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. I also do believe that gender affirming care does save lives. It's been proven through like lots of studies that like basically you know, people that are allowed to go through gender affirming care, that they're less prone to issues with like, you know, depression and shit like that, which can potentially lead to like suicide. I do think gender affirming care does save lives. But again, like it's one of those things where it's a complicated issue, right? As long as the process and diagnosis is done correctly and it's done with the supervision of a doctor and like, you know, a child's guardians, like I don't care. But this whole like let's treat children without their parents' knowledge because their parent refused to allow them to pursue the treatment, that part I don't agree with, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, chat? Anyway, you can have gender dysphoria even though you don't identify as trans. True. I had gender dysphoria growing up before I became comfortable with myself. Fair. There are a lot of therapists usually in place in their first session. They immediately place them on puberty blockers. This is what lots of detransition stories read. Yeah, and what that comes down to is that's just a bad doctor and a bad therapist, right? I don't think we should make determinations on whether something should be acceptable or not based on bad doctors being bad doctors. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, it's one of those things that like I've done like research in my own time to come to my conclusion because I wasn't sure. There's still another trans issue that I'm not sure where I stand on either, and I'm looking into it whenever I have a moment, which is the sports issue, right? Trans women in women's sports. I'm still not sure where I fall on that, right? And so when it comes to that, I'm doing the research to try and like figure out where I stand on it. But yeah, I've kind of looked into this whole gender affirming care thing for minors, and that's kind of where I stand on it at the moment. But anyway, let's continue.
Like outside of not even talking about trans, I think you said something along the lines of like medications for like mental health. I think it's been, you know, there have been a lot of studies that have shown those medications aren't very safe and can lead.
Emmy in the chat says giving kids with gender dysphoria stuff on the first visit just seems like a bad idea. Yeah, exactly. I think they have to go through the whole process of confirming the diagnosis through therapy and stuff. That's kind of the way I feel about it. As long as there's a confirmed diagnosis, like thorough investigation is done to confirm that yes, this is gender dysphoria, and like I said, the parents are involved and whatnot, then yeah, go ahead and move forward with it. But yeah, let's continue.
Lead to like, I don't know, addictions or mental problems. Like I wouldn't say those medications are free from side effects. There are plenty of parents who decide to not give their kids medications that doctors recommend. Just
Sitlali? I'm sorry, I may not be pronouncing that right. It's a parent's responsibility when the kid isn't an adult. Then it's their choice. As long as the kid is under their parents, it's their responsibility. Yeah, I don't like the idea of kids receiving treatment for not even just gender dysphoria. I don't like the idea of kids receiving treatment for any ailment without parent involvement. Okay, so this is not specific to gender dysphoria. I don't think a kid should be receiving any treatment without parent involvement. It just, something about it, like for my own personal morals and ethics, it doesn't jive with me. So, it's fine. Everyone pronounces my name wrong. I'll say Espinoza. I could do your last name. I could say Espinoza. To be honest, giving a teen HRT or puberty blockers without their parents' permission is dangerous to the teen because the parents' reaction could result in the teen ending up homeless or hurt. Yeah, see, that's another thing. Like, when you're dealing with parents that are unaccepting of, their kid being trans, giving treatment to your kid behind the parent's back, you could be also putting them in harm's way that way too, right? So that's actually a good point. That's another reason why I don't like the whole parents not being looped in. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I'm all in favor of, as long as a proper diagnosis is given, I'm all in favor of like kids getting gender affirming care, but I don't like this idea of the parents aren't accepting, so let's go behind their back and treat the kid without their knowledge. And again, that applies to any treatment whatsoever. I don't like that idea.
Just based off of them doing their own research and having concerns.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I hear your concerns completely. I mean, it is a
Small, I'm just going to call you Smalls because I don't know the rest of your name. Every provider I saw as a child was absolutely against me trying to start without my mom knowing while I lived at home. It was understood things would be more dangerous. Yeah, I can understand that perspective for sure.
fact about the world of medicine that every single medication is going to have side effects. That's why we have doctors and psychiatrists and researchers working together to do risk-benefit analyses and determine which medicines end up helping people in the long run based off of a risk-benefit analysis. And I absolutely...
Carl Jobs in the chat says, dude, I'm in trouble, man. Big trouble. Oh, no. What happened? What did you get yourself into, my dude?
Absolutely.
Oh, shit. I'll be right back, chat. I just realized my order is right about to get here, and I got to go grab it. So I'll be right back, chat. All right, chat. I am back. I see Carl in the chat saying there's no future for him. What's going on? What did I miss? Let me see if I can scroll up. I found a really good adult video content website, and I've just been watching videos for... Oh my god! He's gone full Coomer, chat!
Welcome to the Cum Zone.
You came to the right community, Carl. Let's get a round of applause for Carl joining the Coomer Nation. I have to ask, what's your category, Carl? What's your favorite category, okay? Because I love me some amateur POVs, my dude. Especially if it's VR amateur POV. Oh my god, that shit is legendary. You know when you find a stash and the stash is too great and that you'll never use it at all? I'm in that position right now. Jesus. My wife is Asian, so that's all that needs to be said. Oh, we got someone who's into Asian stuff. Let's go. But what's up, Carl? How you doing? I hope you're doing good. All right, chat. I'm the type of streamer that I hate to eat on stream. But I do want to do a longer stream for you guys today. We've already been streaming for almost 5 hours. We're going to go full Hasanabi right now, chat. I'm sorry. We're going to be eating on stream. I know. You guys are going to have to hear me chomp. Not quite mukbang, but this is like if you've ever wanted a tipster mukbang. This is the closest we're ever going to get. So I will be eating while we listen to the debate and in between gaming. I got me some taco hell, so my bowels will be crying later. All right, but we're going full Hasanabi here. I will be munching and crunching on stream. Let's fucking go.
What a fucking Weasley little liar, dude.
All right, let's continue with the debate.
Trust, doctors and scientists and researchers, especially looking at the research myself, to show that, yeah, these medicines are absolutely efficacious at reducing harm in people.
What did I get? I got a cheesy gordita crunch. And here's the key. Anything at Taco Bell, you have to add the creamy jalapeno sauce. If it doesn't matter, if it already comes with it, you ask for extra. If it doesn't come with it at all, you get it added onto there. Their creamy jalapeno sauce goes on everything at Taco Bell. Don't fucking at me. Reese the Frog says, do we have any other trans people in the chat? We've actually had a lot of trans people join the community lately, which, by the way, you guys are absolutely welcome here, okay? We are not anti-trans here. We're not going to, intentionally misgender you or anything like that. Trans people always have been and always will be welcome in my chat. We don't tolerate that kind of, bullshit here, all right? Where people just shit on trans people. We've never done that here. All right, let's continue the debate. Wait, I got to be careful with anything from Taco Bell. Oh, my bowels will absolutely be mad at me later. It's going to happen. All right, let's continue the debate. And after I get a couple bites of this in, we'll continue with the gameplay too.
Especially based off of risk-benefit analysis with lots of screening and diagnoses involved.
Well, do you trust Big Pharma?
I don't think Big Pharma is the same thing as the kind of research and evidence which goes into figuring out which kinds of medicine are efficacious. But I'm somebody who, I believe in socialized medicine. I think that we should absolutely nationalize the pharmaceutical industry and run it as non-for-profit by the government to remove the influence of Big Pharma, and particularly the ways in which they'll do market manipulation.
Here's the thing, though. Big Pharma is just undeniably connected to medicine, though, right? They create a majority of medications, as far as I know. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about Big Pharma, but they're undeniably connected, right?
So
they're there to make money. They want to put people on these prescriptions, probably people that don't necessarily need them, so that they can continue to get their profits. I mean, look at how much, what's that medication that people are on right now that is running out? I forget what it's called.
Insulin? Adderall?
Adderall. There are so many people who are on Adderall now, but it wasn't like that 30, 40 years ago. And now we have people who are really addicted to that. And that is supposed to be a life-saving medication, right? Or helping with your mental health.
Yeah, actually.
So to me, it's there are definitely medications going.
So for me, this is a dishonest argument. Because it's kind of like I mentioned before. Somebody mentioned in chat, bad doctors who will instantly put people on HRT without actually doing the legwork to confirm a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And in that case, we're talking about bad doctors, right? If a doctor is taking advantage of incentives to provide people HRT, because let's be honest, doctors do get, a lot of times, from my understanding, they get a kickback for the drugs they prescribe. So there is this incentive to prescribe certain drugs. And, if you're taking advantage of that incentive just to give people drugs that they don't actually need, then you're a scummy doctor. That sounds like medical malpractice to me at that point, right? So, but again, that's an issue of bad doctors. Should we discontinue certain types of treatment just because there are bad doctors that exist? I don't think so. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think so.
Around that are for profit, that are being prescribed by doctors, which I would like to know, is it A, they're just, believing Big Pharma way too much, or are they in on it for the profit as well? I don't know.
To be clear, every single medicine in a capitalist society with this for-profit healthcare system is going to make money for Big Pharma. Yeah. Even cancer treatment is profitable for Big Pharma, and they are going to want to provide cancer treatment because it makes them money. And so that's why I would nationalize the pharmaceutical industry. Would you also do the same?
Could you explain what you mean by nationalize?
Yeah, so essentially this would mean that instead of having private companies which produce medicines and sell them for profit, we would have the government run the production of medicine in a non-profit format.
How would that work in terms of like the economy? Like, where is that money coming from?
Yeah, it would be publicly funded by taxes, and also the government would end up
Yeah,
taking over the
no.
existing institutions.
I do.
Okay, so
Here's
I'm
the thing,
providing a
since I've
solution for the profit incentives of big pharma. If you're not
I genuinely don't understand why, like, okay, so people, there's a lot of people who advocate for like socialized healthcare, meaning like kind of like Canada, where like you have healthcare as a citizen of the country. You don't necessarily have to buy like, additional healthcare insurance coverage and shit like that. Granted, anybody who lives in Canada will tell you it's still a good idea to buy additional healthcare coverage because the stock, I guess you could say, coverage that they provide every like Canadian citizen isn't all that great. So it's still a good idea to sign up for a healthcare provider, whether it's through your employer or you pay for that shit yourself. It's still a good idea to get a little extra coverage because the socialized healthcare coverage isn't super great. Having said that, I'll never understand the people who like they're like, well, if we're going to do socialized healthcare, where does that money come from? And then people are like, well, it's taxed. Well, I don't want to pay more taxes. What difference does it make if like it's coming out of your taxes to pay for socialized healthcare or it's coming out of your paycheck to pay for your healthcare coverage anyway? Like either way, no matter how you slice it, it's coming out of your pool of money to pay for your healthcare. Because like when your employer provides your healthcare, that shit's not free. Like they're not just giving you that. It comes out of your paycheck. And yeah, like you don't see that money because it does, like it's itemized in there, but like your earnings pay towards that insurance. It's not just for free. Okay. And like if you're somebody who's paying for your own insurance out of your own pocket because maybe you run your own business or something, you're still paying for that insurance, right? So what's the difference if you're paying for your insurance through your taxes or if it's being taken out of your paycheck through your employer, or you're like an independent business owner and you're paying for your own healthcare? Like why the money's coming, like being taken from you either way for healthcare. So what does it matter if it's like socialized healthcare that gets paid for in taxes? I don't understand that logic.
not into the idea of like socialized medicine, then what's your solution to the profit incentives of big pharma?
Go back to like any point in history before we had these medications, or at least a majority of them, people were fine. I mean, people may have like had their issues, but like mental health like has gone like up apparently, right? Like we have a mental health crisis in this country.
Yeah, why is that?
I feel like a lot of that has to do with the medications that big pharma is putting out. We people in this country are more medicated than they have ever been in history.
Yeah, because we have
I see that as a good thing. Because in the past, we've had, like, first of all, there was a stigma surrounding mental health, right? There was this big stigma associated with mental health where people didn't want to seek the treatment of mental health because, like, well, people are going to look at me negatively if I have a mental health problem. They're going to think I'm crazy or something like that. But people are a lot more accepting of, like, mental health being a thing. Like, if you had talked, like, I don't know, like maybe 20 or 30 years ago, if I had come out and said, hey guys, I have an anxiety and depression disorder, right? If I had came out publicly with that, like that would be like really like stigmatized, 20 or 30 years ago. But nowadays I can be honest about it and say like, yeah, I have an anxiety disorder, I have a depression disorder, and I have a social anxiety disorder. And nobody like looks lesser at me because I deal with these things. They're just like, yo, like hopefully you can get the treatment you need to actually like seek that. So I feel like more people are getting medicated because it's not as stigmatized, but also I think that like more people getting medicated for this stuff is a net positive, right? Because less people are, like having to suffer in silence with that shit. More people are getting the medication and the treatment they need in order to like actually, live happier, better lives. And I think that will ultimately like contribute to less people committing suicide due to like mental health related issues. So like she sees that as like a negative, like too many people are being prescribed these drugs. Like, if it's benefiting them so that they're not taking their own lives and it's not bringing harm to them, like, what's the issue? Like, I understand from the perspective of, like, again, we mentioned this before, there are bad doctors that will overprescribe this stuff so they can get the benefits of, like, prescribing these drugs, but that's not a case of, like, a bad system. That's a case of a bad doctor. Like, a bad doctor taking advantage of incentives to give their patient drugs that they don't need. And I don't think we should hinder people getting care for their ailments just because bad doctor is bad, right? I don't know. I think that's kind of silly.
have more medications now than we have ever done before. But like, I
And you
guess
think it's a
what's
good thing
your
we're putting
what's
those
your
things in?
solution
Do you
for
think a
this?
person that should be healthy, like, should be putting anything in their body? I would hope you would want the majority of Americans to not have to be on medication, to just be born healthy. Isn't that the goal?
I mean, sure, but if people benefit from medicine, then I think
Just be born healthy. What is that argument? Some people are born with disabilities. Some people are born with ailments. Some people are born with mental health problems. Like, you can't control if somebody is born with an ailment. Like, it just happens. Like, I didn't choose to suffer from, a depression disorder. I didn't choose to suffer from an anxiety disorder. I didn't choose to suffer from social anxiety. My wife has a disability that she got through birth. She has muscular dystrophy. My wife didn't choose to have muscular dystrophy. So like, what is this argument of like, well, we want kids to be born healthier? Like, of course we do. But sometimes shit happens. Like, it's genetics and we don't have any control of that. So like, what is this argument? I don't understand.
that they should probably take that medicine.
Right. But you're also, if we come back to like our main topic, you're calling life-changing medicine and gender affirming care necessary and life-saving, which I don't personally agree with.
Well, it absolutely is life-saving. I mean,
It's really not, though.
so you don't think that like there's an association between giving children gender affirming treatment and a reduction in the lifetime suicidality? Do you have evidence to like disprove that?
I mean, a lot of your evidence, your peer-reviewed evidence,
Yo, she pulled the source meme.
Nice argument. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
True though. Honestly, true.
is very like, they came to conclusions with like very small studies of very small groups of people.
Okay, do
and
you
a
have
lot
better
of it
data?
is based off of like, I really want to know when they're like, oh, it's like based off of, oh, they said they had less levels of depression after transitioning. I'm like, what does that mean? How do you get that information out of someone, right?
You
If we
can
really
read
think
the
about
study
that,
and
you
find
have
out
to
how
just
they did
ask
that.
someone. And if you think about the pressure,
Wait,
I'm sorry, I
Kelly,
just want to say
I
something.
think you didn't wait.
If you think about
They
the
explained that
pressure
in the
that
study.
this community puts on detransitioners, anytime someone posts a video about detransitioning, all the comments are horrid. You guys pretty much attack people who detransition. I'm not saying you personally, but a lot of people in the community on the far left do that. So it does not surprise me that probably in a lot of these studies, a lot of these people don't even want to admit that they're not happy or that like they feel like detransitioning or that.
Wait,
And
if
also,
people
in
get
a couple of
backlash on
these studies
social
that you did
media.
show me,
Wait, hold
we
on.
were
I need to
asking
stop you right
trans
there.
people-
Hold up. I need to stop you right
Okay.
there. Like,
Okay.
if people get like backlash on social media, they're not going to get backlash on like an anonymous peer-reviewed study. So there's no reason for them to lie in that scenario. But you were asking like, how did they tell that these kids were less depressed? You would have known that if you actually read the study that I cited for you. So essentially, what they did,
they're less depressed. You have to.
Yeah. I
explain
can
to me
tell
how
you what they
yeah,
did.
Please explain it to me, Niall. Please explain it to me.
Gladly. So
How did
what
they
they
find
did,
out that they were less depressed?
Yeah,
Like, give me the information.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. So what they did was they used diagnostic screening criteria for clinical depression, and what they found.
Reese the Frog in the chat says, sorry, I know my mouth is full. This is really fucking rude. Reese the Frog says it's less than 1% of people who detransition. Yeah, it's less than 1% of a group of people who are less than 2% of the overall population that are trans. So we're talking about a very, very small number of detransitioners. Excuse me, I'm sorry, my mouth was full.
Found is that compared to before treatment versus after treatment, 60% less of the trans youth even qualified for the clinical diagnostic criteria of clinical depression. And if you know anything about
again, can you clarify how they were telling like the different levels of depression? What is this amazing technology I've never heard of?
Yeah, they used screening criteria from, I think it was the PHQ-9 or the PHQ-8. What was it called?
Can you tell me the title of the source you're referring to?
That's why I always laugh. Reese the Frog says exactly. That's why I always laugh when people like ask me like, why do you care about this stuff, tipster? And it's like, first of all, I've always cared. I haven't been vocal about it because one of the things in like the content creation community people tell you is don't share your politics. You'll alienate your audience. And I'm kind of at this age where like, I'd much rather potentially alienate my audience by giving my honest opinions on things rather than like just stay silent, right? About things that I actually care about. But like, I care about trans issues because I have friends that are trans. You know, I had a coworker at an old job that was trans. I have a friend that I knew in high school that transitioned later in life. And I had a friend that was a member of this community that unfortunately we lost. You know, they took their own life, but they were trans. And like, you know, I cared about this person. There are people in my life that I care about that are trans, which is why I support these issues, right? And the other thing is like a lot of people will like act like, oh, like Tipster isn't even knowledgeable of this stuff, so like why does he give a shit, right? I think I'm a lot more knowledgeable than people realize. Just because I haven't spoke about this stuff in the past, it doesn't mean I don't know about these things, right? I've seen like one criticism is like, oh, I've never seen like Tipster talk about like an anti-trans bill before. And I'll be honest, I don't know every anti-trans bill that's out there. I know about the stuff that just happened in Florida, but I'm not knowledgeable of like every anti-trans bill in existence. And I couldn't start quoting like, you know, bills at you and stuff like that. But like, I don't think I have to be knowledgeable of every anti-trans bill that's ever been passed or put up for vote, you know, in the United States or like anywhere else in the world, in order for me to feel like people are people and respecting people for being people, whether they're gay, whether they're straight, whether they're trans, whether they're black, whether they're white, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to care. You don't have to know about these things in order to care about people and support people for being people, right? I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about this stuff than people realize. Anyway.
Too.
This was the first study I cited in my source. It was the
mental health outcomes in transgender and non-binary youth receiving gender affirming care.
It was the PHQ-9, which is a standard like depression screening diagnostic criteria.
In that particular study, it literally states only 60% were doing much better with their depression.
Yeah.
If you know anything about science, at least when I was in high
Flaming Basketball in Club in the chat says episode 880 of the Econotalk podcast discusses the nature of peer review studies. Can you do me a favor and can you link that in the Discord server? I'd actually like to take a look at that in my free time. Are You Trans Ally? Name 6 of their albums. Oh my god.
high school and college, you need to have like an at least 95% success rate for your study to be accurate. 60% is a very low statistic.
Actually, in terms of depression studies...
Which, by the way, speaking of that, Are You a Trans Ally? I don't like to put labels like that on myself. I think it's kind of like... I think it comes off as virtue signaling when you put labels like that on yourself. Like, it's one thing if, like, people in the trans community want to look at me and say, hey, we consider Tipster a trans ally. Like, that's fine. But to me, like, if I were to, like, let's say I put on my Twitter bio, trans ally, I feel like that would come off as, like, virtue signaling. So that's why I don't put those labels on myself. But if you happen to be, like, you know, a transgender person or a transgender influencer or something like that, and you say, like, Tipster's a trans ally, fair enough. You're welcome to, you know, say whatever you want about me. But I'm not going to put that label on myself because I feel like it would just come off as virtue signaling if I were to, like, slap that label on myself like that. Does that make sense? I don't know.
60% is amazing. In terms of the research we have on antidepressants, for example, the average antidepressant has a depression remission rate of just 30%. And the best antidepressants we have on the market have a depression remission rate of 50.78%. I can give you...
I'll say for, like, my depression disorder, I tried taking antidepressants in the past, and they didn't really do much for me. For me, having a good, you know, seeking therapy, like, I go to therapy, and then also, like, having a good support system around me, that's what helped me the most. Treatment for, like, these mental ailments is different for everybody, obviously. So, like, for me, taking antidepressants didn't do shit. Therapy and having a good support system around me helped the most. But, yeah. Anyway. So, when they say that, like, oh, you know, these antidepressants only have this percentage of, like, you know, actually, like, working or being effective, that's true, because it's not gonna work for everyone. Different treatments are gonna work differently for different people. Now, when it comes to anxiety, anti-anxiety meds, they help a lot for me. You know, anti-anxiety meds work great for me. Although I don't take any of the, like, you know, like, daily dosage, like, anti-anxiety meds. What I use is, what is it called? Is this? No, this isn't it. This is my omeprazole. I think it's this one. Yes, this is it. I take Atarax, and what Atarax is it's a on-the-spot usage prescription for anxiety attacks. So if I'm having an anxiety attack, I could take one of these on the spot, and then after a while it kicks in and it like calms me down. So that's why I don't take something like a Prozac or something like that you would take like every day, and it like controls your mood every day. I don't like the way those kind of drugs make me feel, and so I take Atarax. If I'm having an anxiety attack in the moment, I pop one of these bad boys and it makes me feel better. But yeah, like I said, everybody, different treatments work, different ways for different people. And like, you might seek different treatment than something that might be effective for someone else.
Give you a citation for this. But
that's exactly why
in
we
this
shouldn't
study,
have these medications on the market, and why we shouldn't be giving them to people.
In this study,
because they have these side effects.
Hold up. In this study, the treatment for gender...
Every drug that people use for anything has side effects. Like, what? Like, I remember I took something for recently. I had a really bad like sinus infection, and there was something I had to take that like gave me really bad like fucking basically like cottonmouth sort of. But am I not going to take that because it has a side effect? Like every major drug that we've, even something like fucking Tylenol, over the counter shit, like has side effects. Is she really saying that we shouldn't take medications that have side effects? Because at that point you won't take anything. What the fuck?
Gender dysphoria was more effective at alleviating depression than the best antidepressants we have on the market. Are you opposed to providing treatment for depression with antidepressants too?
I think it should be a very strong case scenario. Same with like transgenderism. I feel like you need to have strong body dysmorphia or gender dysphoria. I apologize.
Yeah, that's the idea. Like, we're not talking about like trying to give like, as I mentioned before, like we're not talking about like somebody just comes into the doctor's office and says, "Hey, I have gender dysphoria, give me HRT." Like, no, we're talking about like people who have a proper diagnosis, like the investigative work is actually done to come to a proper diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and they're being treated as such with gender affirming care. Like, what?
To transition, because honestly, if you only have a little bit of depression, I don't think you should be medicated. You probably should go to therapy, or there's probably something in your life that's causing this. And also this study that you're referencing, by the way, like a lot of your studies, it had 104 people. You're basing all transgender people off of 104 people study.
104 is a pretty decent sample size.
Only 60% felt 60% were doing better with their depression. That's 40% of those 104 people, almost half that aren't feeling happy.
How big of a
are you going to ignore them?
How big of a sample size do you think we need to run a decent experiment?
I gotta be honest with you. I was actually kind of impressed with the study. Let me see if I can find it.
Naomi also talked to Andrew, who was the guy who hosted the debate between you and BXploit. It was an interesting conversation. You should watch that too. Maybe we'll watch that for a future stream, because I like the idea of we'll cover the segments on streams that we plan on covering for the day, and then doing this like where we're playing like a video game or something while like reacting to a debate. I like the idea of doing that. So if you want to put that in the topic subs or like the reaction subs in my Discord, we'll definitely take a look at that. Yeah, for sure. But I will say this, because I've already listened to this entire debate. It's like a over 3-hour debate. Is that right? Am I remembering that right? It's almost 3.5 hours, this debate. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. We're going to listen to, I want to at least get to the part about slavery, which is insane. How close are we to getting to that point? We still have a ways to go, because it's right around the hour mark. It is at the hour mark, actually. So I want to get to at least that part before I wrap it up. But I've listened to this whole debate, and I gotta be honest, like, I've become a fan of this Naomi person. I've never heard of them prior to this, but I've become a big fan. I like their stuff, for sure. But anyway.
I'm just like asking you, like, in general, how many...
that's titled Pubertal Suppression for Transgender Youth and Risk of Unaliving Idolation.
I actually have another debate that I want to react to like this soon. It's a Hunter Avalone debate with some guy about, what was it about? I think it was about, let me see. I know I have it in my submissions. Let me see. Where's it at? It's a Hunter Avalone debate on, was it like somebody making like dumb arguments about like it's one of those like she was asking for it, like rape debates. It sounds insane, but like that's why I want to react to it because I was watching it live. Oh, it was the whole like a woman loses their value if they're raped. The title of the debate is "She Lost Her Value: Disturbing Rape Debate." Yeah, we're gonna react to that in a future stream for sure. Cause holy shit. But yeah, I want to do more like reactions to debates during streams like this. I think that could be fun. All right, let's continue.
I was actually kind of impressed with that one because it had over 20,000 people until I read the details and realized it was actually just 85 people if you really did the math out.
It was actually 89 people if you would have read the study instead of just doing some napkin
Oh
math
my
on
God,
the
there's a
abstract.
reason I said about 85 people on my video. Are you really going to nitpick me on that?
Well, no, I'm just pointing out that you're just doing napkin math on an abstract without like really reading these studies. But anyways,
Damn!
like,
I
my
literally
question
came
to
back through the
you,
article, I'm pretty sure it said like around. It gave
My
like
question
a
to
percentage,
you-
and then I did the math out on a calculator, and it was like a decimal, but whatever.
yeah, it's a difference of like 4, not a difference of a decimal. If you would have actually read the
Okay.
study. But
Don't
anyways,
think
what I'm
it makes
talking
that big a
about,
difference, but
kind of,
whatever.
my question to you is like, you know, do you know anything about like the statistical method and kind of like what's an appropriate sample size for like a given study?
No, I don't. Why don't you
So you're
inform
just
me?
basing it on like feelings,
I'm basing it on common sense.
on common
Common
sense.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
I always like when people pull like the common sense like fucking argument, like, oh, I'm basing my argument on common sense, because what's common sense to you and me is not necessarily going to be common sense to somebody else, right? So I always think it's really silly when somebody does like an appeal to like common sense to make an argument, because it's like your common sense is not always going to be equivalent to my common sense. I don't know. It's insane.
your
I don't
feelings.
think that because I think it's pretty obvious that like big pharma and like
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna make a lot of fans of Naomi here. Let me go ahead and link this in the chat. So if you guys want to like give this person a follow, they're a Twitch streamer. We're listening to this off of YouTube. So let me go ahead and link this in the chat. Where is it? I think I can do it here. Let me see. Hopefully this works. Let me know if this goes through, chat. Looks like it went all through on YouTube. Looks like Twitch. What about Kick people? Did it go through on Kick? It didn't show me on Kick, but let me check the Kick chat. It did go through. Okay, cool. For some reason, it just didn't show up on the thing. All right. So definitely give her a sub, because I like her debates. Because like I said, this is something that like I haven't always publicly talked about, like watching political debates, but I've always been a big fan of like watching political debates. And it's like one of these things where like every once in a while I discover somebody who does them that I haven't listened to before. And this was one of those things. I saw a clip of this debate shared on Twitter. And when I saw that, I was like, I got to see that full debate. I think it was Cherry, Xanderhall's editor, who tweeted it. And I asked them, yo, please send me a link to this because I want to watch this full debate. And after that, I was like, this is insane. This is really fucking insane. The episode 880 of the yeah, you mentioned that before, and I asked you, Flaming Basketball, if you want to join my Discord and you want to link that in the Discord. I want to take a look at that in my own free time. Maybe we'll do it on stream. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe I'll do it in private. I'm not sure, but I definitely want to check that out. So if you can link me that, I'd appreciate that.
the government and everything is pretty connected, and a lot of these things are for profit. So many people survived and were happy without these medications that we're giving to people all the time,
Wait,
and
the
now they're all
people-
hooked
the
on
people
them,
who
and we have all
sell-
these mental health issues.
Wait,
Do you not think
Kelly,
the
hold up,
increase in
You're
mental?
conflating
No,
two
let me
things.
speak. You're not letting me speak. I let you speak. Let me speak.
This chick has been talking over Naomi like the whole fucking time. Like, what are you talking about? Tipster, do you know Vosh? Yes. In fact, I've kind of been, because I know a lot of people have like, you know, some people have negative impressions of Vosh. I've actually been a closeted Vosh viewer for a little bit. Because again, like, I've never really publicly talked about like my politics before, and I've never really publicly talked about like, you know, me like enjoying watching like political debates and shit like that. But like, yeah, I haven't been a Vosh viewer for too long. I want to say maybe a year and a half, 2 years. But yes, I do watch Vosh. Yeah, I do watch Vosh.
Do you not think the increase in mental health issues in this country is due to big pharma prescribing medications to people who don't really need them?
I think that there certainly are things we can do to have like
I've actually been having so much fun with, I know she's only done, I want to say like 2 of these so far, but Clara, for those of you guys who don't know, Keffel, she's doing something called lore review on her streams as of late, where she's reacting to like old debates. Like one of the first ones she did was the infamous JonTron debate. And I've been loving that because a lot of these debates that she's reacting to as part of her lore review, these are debates that I have already seen. And I really enjoyed watching when they first happened, right? And so it's been really fun watching her do this lore review. And I kind of like, the idea of like doing something similar. Obviously not trying to steal her idea, but there's just like really iconic debates in like the debate bro sphere that I've like really enjoyed watching in the past. And I think it would be super cool to like react to some of these. Let me get some ones in the chat if you guys agree. But yeah, if you guys haven't been following Clara's, like, even if you're not necessarily a fan of Keffel's, check out their lore review of like some of these old debates. It's been a lot of fun to watch, especially for her because she's relatively new to the scene. So she's coming at these with fresh eyes. It's one thing for me to comment on a debate I've already seen back when it happened like years ago. It's quite another to see someone with a fresh perspective take a look at a lot of these debates and give their thoughts on them. But definitely recommend checking that out if you guys haven't already. So, but anyway, let's continue.
Like better screening criteria. But in general, from what I've seen in these studies, is that the treatment is overwhelmingly very effective.
I can't watch Vosh because of the observations Destiny has given. Lol, Vosh is smart and knows what he's talking about, but he could do a lot more if he really wanted to. Yeah, I will say this. It is interesting being a Vosh fan and also a Destiny fan. There's like so many of these people that I'm fans of, like both of them, and they don't get along or they don't like each other. Like, holy shit. I like a good example is like someone like Clara, right? Like, not only am I like, not only do I watch Clara's content, but I also am like, kind of friendly with Clara. So like having that like relationship while also being a fan of like Destiny's content, it's a little bit tricky for sure. But yeah, I mean, I like both of them. Honestly, I'm a fan of both of their stuff.
But you asked me about what's appropriate for like a sample size in order to conduct a statistical survey, so I'd like to get back to that.
The timestamp you're looking... Well, I'm not looking for the timestamp. We're listening to as much of this as we can, Daniel J. I appreciate you providing the timestamp, but yeah, we don't need it. We're going to listen to as much as we can, and at bare minimum, I'm going to listen up to that point, and then I'll probably wrap up after that.
We actually have like math we can do in order to estimate like kind of what's a decent sample size for like a given population. And like the higher proportional population that a certain group is, kind of the bigger sample you're going to need in order to have a representative sample. And so a group of people that makes up about 2% of the population, which is kind of like an upper bound estimate of trans people, you would need a sample
Especially
size...
non-binary people.
Yeah, you would need a sample size of 31 people in order to have like a statistically significant sample with a 95% confidence level. So these studies are like 3 times that margin, which under like these statistical methods and the math that we use to do this, it seems like, yeah, this is a pretty good sample size.
I kind of feel like, I mean, I get your point, but I kind of feel like it's irrelevant because as much as you have your peer-reviewed essays, right, or articles, whatever you want to call them, I found some sources.
You think that the math is irrelevant because of your feelings?
Not because of my feelings. If you want to pretend like that's what I'm saying,
you said it was because of your common sense.
It's not. It's facts over feelings. That's what I believe in.
I mean, if you're using common sense as a factor to determine how you feel, like I feel like you are appealing to your feelings, right? You feel that your common sense is like accurate and like I don't know.
Common sense is feelings,
I know that I'm
not
biologically
facts.
a male. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm a biological male. That doesn't make me want to cry. Like I'm not La La Land, you know?
Okay. That has nothing to do with what I just said, but I don't see why you're like disputing like statistical rigorous methods that are based in math and science because of your common sense feelings.
Why are you going to act like that was so irrelevant when you literally said like, oh, it's based on your feelings and not facts, when you can't even admit the fact that you're biologically male just like me?
I mean, biologically, I'm a transsexual female. My biology is pretty different from like a cis-sexual male in lots of ways that are relevant in biological and medical context. So I'm not going to lie to people and say that I'm just the same as a biological male in order to appeal to like conservatives.
How so? Are you intersex?
I mean, if you start taking like medical transition hormones, for example, essentially you are medically inducing an intersex condition, which does affect your biological functions and medical needs.
Or we're just biological men who are taking female hormones, you know?
Yeah, and that cause you to develop female sex characteristics in certain aspects, thus changing your
Okay.
biology.
That's not changing your
Reese Frog says, are they both trans? Yes, they are both trans. We're talking about two transgender women having this debate with each other. Yes, that is the case.
DNA.
I didn't say it changes your DNA. I said it changes aspects of your biology.
Okay.
You do know that biology is more than just DNA,
But your
right?
DNA is still male. So why
Yeah,
does that
I do
matter?
have
It's
XY
clearly different from a
chromosomes.
biological
Who
woman,
cares?
right?
Yeah, obviously the difference between transsexual females and cissexual females. I'm saying that my medical needs are more in line with intersex people, not with cissexual males.
Okay. I mean, if you want to believe it that way, that's
That's
fine.
just,
I
like,
don't
factually
really think of
true.
my transition in that way. I don't know.
Wait,
I
do
think
you
that's a
think
very
that your
interesting way to put it.
do you think that your biology hasn't changed at all from taking hormones?
I think my hormones have changed from taking hormones.
Right, and
That's part of your biology, no? Like, what? Like anything that changes, like that. What? Does she not acknowledge that that's part of your biology? Bro, what the fuck?
hormones cause your body to it causes your genes to express different traits and you develop
Right.
different characteristics. Like, for example,
Right.
growing breasts.
Okay, does that take away from the fact that I'm a male who's taking estrogen to get secondary female sex characteristics? Like,
I mean,
I'm still
I didn't say
biologically
it changes
male.
your chromosomes. Like, when you say biologically male, are you just referring to, like, chromosomes?
I'm referring to chromosomes and DNA.
Okay, because, like, there's a lot more to biology than just chromosomes and DNA.
Oh my God, we were born with male genitalia.
Yeah, I know that.
We were born men.
Yeah, I know that. I'm not
Can't
disputing
deny
that.
that fact. Why are you like dancing around it?
I'm not disputing that at all. I'm just recognizing that my biology's changed because of the hormones I take in certain aspects.
Right.
That's just a fact.
Okay, great. Yes, our biology, I'll give you that. It's changed in certain aspects. It doesn't mean
Okay.
we're women, and it doesn't mean that we're not biologically men.
I mean, like, it depends on, like, how you're going to, like, categorize what makes somebody biologically male or female. Like, obviously, in terms of my chromosomes and my DNA, it's going to be more in line with your typical cis male. But in terms of things like my external phenotype, it's going to be a lot more similar to, like a female person. It really depends on, like, what kind of category you're talking about. For example, like, some aspects of medicine depend a lot more on whether or not your endocrine system is estrogen dominant versus testosterone dominant. Other medical biological factors might depend on certain, like, DNA traits. It really just depends. That's why I'm saying that, like, essentially a medical transition is like medically inducing an intersex condition.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
If you want to phrase it that way, go for it. But I don't need to cope that way.
It's not a cope, it's just acknowledging
Cope?
reality.
The only one I hear coping here is her.
You are coping.
What the fuck?
You just can't accept what you're seeing. Yes, you're coping and seething. The truth it is scalding, and now you are molding and coping so hard.
I mean, you're literally the one that's appealing to common sense and not coming to like this debate with like actual facts and like studies backing your statements. Like, who's the one really coping here?
All right, difference of opinion.
Wait, what did I say that's not real?
I mean, to me personally, it just feels like a way of coping with reality.
By stating the truth about my biology and recognizing that biology is more complicated than what you learned in elementary school?
You're going out of your way to phrase it in a very specific way to deny the reality of what we actually are.
I'm not denying any reality. I'm just explaining that reality is more simple, like more complicated than these simple ideas about sex you learned in elementary school.
Well, I mean, I think it is a pretty simple concept. There's men and women. Men are typically born with male genitalia. Females are typically born with female genitalia. It's
Yeah,
just how
nobody's
it's always
disputing
worked
that.
since the beginning of time.
Nobody's disputing that.
You kind of are, though, because you're acting like gender really doesn't.
Joan says, which one is Kelly? Kelly's the one that's in the Discord window. I know it's kind of small on my end, but the one that's in the Discord window, and Naomi is the one that's on the bigger window.
Exist. Like, oh, you're not
what
a
I'm
man or a
saying.
woman. You're something in between, right?
Well, if I'm talking about like gender identity, that doesn't really have anything to do with like biological sex. because gender identity and biological sex are different words that refer to different things.
I completely agree with you. I still think most of the time sex
And Animal in the chat says, as somebody with a background in biology, it is in no way simple. Yeah.
and gender line up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do
There's a
agree
very
that they
strong
are
correlation
separate.
there.
I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. But I always like to clarify that when I say that.
Good. So I guess, like, did you think there was anything wrong with what I was saying about biology?
I'm sorry, anything wrong about what?
What I was saying about biology?
Have you seen this Naomi
About biology? I mean, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think you're dancing around the reality because calling yourself, oh, I induced an intersex condition. To me, the only people who are actually intersex are the people who are genuinely born that way, who are born with like both parts or like some version of that.
Well,
you and I, we weren't born intersex. We were born biological men. And we went out of our way to go on HRT and get estrogen, the female hormone, and testosterone blockers to block our male hormones, correct?
Right.
I honestly think it might be a little offensive if intersex people heard you say that.
I have lots of friends in the intersex community, and I'm a pretty strong intersex advocate. But what I was saying, I use the term transsexual to refer to the biological reality of medically transitioned trans people. I was trying to explain it to you because you seemed confused as to why like a transsexual biology would be different than like a cissexual biology. And so I said, essentially, you know, when you medically transition and become transsexual, what you're essentially doing is it's like inducing an intersex condition. But yeah, I obviously recognize that intersex typically refers to people who are born with mixed sex characteristics or who naturally develop mixed sex characteristics during puberty.
Right. But you weren't saying it was like, you quite literally said, I induced an intersex condition on myself.
I said it was essentially
so I'm not
like doing that.
What does essentially mean then?
Like,
is that not like
kind of
the
like
same thing?
Yeah, but via a different process.
Okay. I mean, I can't speak for the intersex community because I don't know any of them, but like personally,
I can tell.
think they might think that was a little offensive.
Oh, shit! Did you catch that snark? She's like, I can't speak for anyone in the intersex community because I don't know any of them. And Naomi's like, I can tell. Oh, shit.
Oh, shit!
I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty fucking funny. Let's go, dude. Jesus.
I talk to the intersex community quite a bit.
You also have a huge platform, so people might be scared to talk up to you.
I mean, your platform's 7 times my size, so...
I mean, does Naomi really have that huge of a platform? This is not a diss at Naomi's expense, obviously, but I'm looking at her, like, YouTube channel. She has 7,000 subscribers, almost 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. How big is her Twitch? Let me see if I don't know. How big is her Twitch? Let me see if I can find it really quick. Sorry, chat. Community links. Twitch. Let me see her Twitch. Her Twitch is... She has 2.8 thousand followers on Twitch. What's her Twitter? Maybe she's got a big following on Twitter. Maybe it's like Clara, where like Clara has like a massive following on like Twitter, but she doesn't have that big of a following elsewhere. I mean, she's got 8,000 people on Twitter. So like, what is this? Not a like I said, not a diss at Naomi, but like, I don't know if I'd say she has like a massive fucking platform. She has a platform she uses to speak on the things she believes in, but like, I don't know if I would say that's a huge platform, right? I don't know.
Yeah, but I can have a conversation with anybody. I'm super open.
Does anybody know like how many followers this like Kelly Cardigan person has? Can somebody like check that and let me know in chat?
Cool.
Because according to Naomi, like Kelly has a bigger platform.
Let's move on.
Can I bring up one of the points I had?
You wanted to bring something up? Okay, sure.
I mean, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to
like.
Okay, so I found a study that I really wanted to bring up.
Oh, awesome. I love studies.
So gender dysphoria, it's titled Gender Dysphoria in Young People is Rising, and so is Professional Disagreement. A lot of European...
Kelly has 16.3K followers on Twitter. So yeah, she would have the bigger platform. So like, how is she trying to make the argument that like Naomi has this massive platform? I don't even know how that's relevant.
Countries have issued guidance to limit medical intervention for minors. In a recent analysis of insurance claims by the Komodo Health found that nearly 18,000 minors began taking puberty blockers from 2017 to 2021. So that's a huge increase in numbers of kids or not even just kids, just people transitioning in general, which I already think is a bad sign because to me, it kind of just feels like a cash grab. We had less than 2% of people transitioning before like 2014, 2015. And now all of a sudden numbers are skyrocketing in adults and children.
Yeah,
which I guess you can argue, oh, the exposure, people are feeling more accepted. So they're not hiding anymore. I get you can have that argument.
Yeah,
I don't really think.
I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it, right? Being trans is less stigmatized now. Like I remember even when I was a teenager, like that thing was super, that shit was like super stigmatized. I even remember, I hate to admit it, but as a teenager, like making jokes at the expense of like trans people, right? Because it was so stigmatized. So I think the fact that it's less stigmatized these days does result in more people seeking treatment for gender dysphoria and getting like proper diagnoses for gender dysphoria, right? Times change, and as a result, people are more accepting of things that they weren't previously accepting of. So that makes sense. That more people would seek treatment for gender dysphoria, rather than staying closeted the whole time. You know, I don't know. And even then, even with more people seeking treatment for gender dysphoria, it's still a very, very small community. Like, we're not talking about a very large community of people who are like suffering gender dysphoria and seeking treatment for it. It's still a very, very small community. Like I said, it's like, what was it? 2% of the overall global population, less than 2% is like trans. So like, even with that, with more people coming out and seeking treatment, it's still a very, very small number.
People are like recognizing that they're trans, just like how when we stopped demonizing left-handedness, more people were able to safely come out as being left-handed. I mean, do you have like any evidence that like it's not the case, that it's just because we're no longer
She pulled the source meme again.
Nice argument. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
marginalizing, ostracizing trans people, at least to the same extent as we used to, that now more people are able to safely come out as trans?
So this is a peer-reviewed article from the British Medical Journal, and they had surveys aiming to measure prevalence they had surveys that were aiming to measure prevalence that had found that 2% of high school-age teens are identifying as transgender now, which is crazy to me. These young people are also more likely.
How's that crazy? We're talking about 2% of that is a very small pool of people. 2%? Like, how
likely than their cisgender peers to have concurrent mental health and neurodiverse conditions, including depression, anxiety, and attention deficit disorders. The number of private clinics that focus on providing hormones and surgeries have grown a ton in the past few decades. There's more than 100 today.
Right. We all acknowledge that there's more people.
Tell you that this is a money-making game, that people
we
doctors want to get in on the surgeries. Places that put out HRT want to get on.
I mean, this is like getting to like Alex Jones tinfoil hats level of like just like conspiracy theory shit, right? Like, I feel like, as more people, as these conditions are less stigmatized, more people will seek treatment for them, and therefore more resources will need to be provided to treat these people who are coming forward with these ailments, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's ADHD, whether it's autism, whether it's gender dysphoria, like all of these things, like they're being less stigmatized. So more people are seeking treatment, whereas before they would just kind of suffer in silence, right? It's so silly.
On, getting people hooked on hormones. Like, for example, I just had bottom surgery. Obviously that's what I wanted, but like, I have to have estrogen for the rest of my life now. I am technically a slave to the pharmaceutical industry, and they're going to have my money for life. Do you not think there could be some intent there that like we really want to encourage people to transition? So we can get, more infertility. We can get people.
So you've gone into like a lot of points now. Once again, I would nationalize the pharmaceutical industry because I don't think that we should be running medicine for profit, and you don't seem to have a solution for that. But
But
when
you
you're
just want to
talking
tax
about,
everybody. You just want to up taxes for
you
that.
do
You
know
can't
that
do that.
you do know we have studies which show that
I mean, yeah, like if you're seeking out socialized healthcare, like where do you think the money's going to come from? It's got to come from somewhere. You can't just magically provide healthcare to people and like it not get paid for somehow. Like, yeah, taxes. That's the one. That's what makes the most sense, right? I don't know.
nationalizing the pharmaceutical industry is going to be cheaper for everyone in the long run because it cuts out the middleman of like private insurance companies. It cuts out the middleman of like advertising for pharmaceuticals. It cuts out all of these middlemen and bureaucracy which exists because of capitalism, and it's actually way cheaper in the long run. So I'm trying to save people
would
money.
love
I don't know
to
why
see
you're
these
trying to like
studies.
make people like
What
spend
studies
more
are
money on
these? You're telling
healthcare.
me that the public is going to be paying for everyone's health treatment, and you're telling me that's not going to make people's taxes skyrocket. You're saying that's going to all even out.
Well, you're gonna
You
have
are
you
out
would
of
no
your
longer
mind
have
if
to
you think
you would
that.
no longer have to
Again, the reason why the reason why I see these arguments against like taxes in regards to socialized healthcare, the reason why they're ridiculous is like you're still paying for that already. If you're getting your healthcare through your employer, like your employer is not providing that for free. They're not just being nice to you and saying, "Hey, because you work for us and we like you working for us, here's some free healthcare." Like, no, look at the itemizations in your paycheck. Like most employers will provide like itemizations that show this is where your like money's going, like your earnings are going. And there is a percentage of your income that's being taken out of your paycheck to pay for your healthcare. That shit's not free. You're still paying for it. You just think you're not because you're not seeing an actual bill for it. Like you're not actually receiving a bill. It's being taken out of your check. Or like if you're self-employed, you're still having to pay for healthcare. So like, what's the difference if you're paying for it through taxes as opposed to out of your paycheck or paying it for yourself as like an independent business owner? I genuinely don't understand the confusion over this. Right?
pay for healthcare because it's going to be included in your taxes and ends up being cheaper in the long run for everyone. That's just what the studies show. I mean, you can Google that if you don't
makes
believe
us
me.
like Canada, where you have to wait 1,000,000 years to be even seen anywhere, even in an emergency situation. Do you think
we
that's
have we have way more doctors here, and we could absolutely fulfill the needs of our patients without overcharging them out the wazoo and while eliminating this for-profit system, which you seem to recognize. For-profit
That
healthcare
feels
is
like
not a
a
good thing.
very strong assumption. Is there a study for that?
I mean,
Sure.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing about like Kelly's argument, right? And so she's against socialized healthcare, but she's also talking about how like big pharma and the healthcare industry is like for profit, and that like creates like, you know, conflicts of interest and stuff like that, and it contributes to like, you know, doctors like prescribing shit that doesn't need to be prescribed and stuff like that. So like socialized healthcare would like solve these problems, right? Because these incentives wouldn't exist because it's not a for-profit business. But it's like, okay, here's the solution to this problem. But instead of like, okay, yeah, that would solve this, let's go with it. Let's not do that. Right? It's silly. I don't get it. It's just this real circle logic that makes no sense.
We do have studies on the outcomes of socialized medicine, and the outcomes are better than what we have here.
Carl Jobs in the chat says Australia has both private and public, so if you can afford private, you can see a doctor quickly, but if you can't, at least you can see it eventually for free. That's kind of how it works in Canada, right? Like, there's benefits to purchasing your own healthcare, whether you get it through your employer or whether you purchase your own healthcare. Outside of that, you can pay extra for like better service, but like you still get service whether you pay or not, right? That's kind of like how it works in Canada. So like, that makes sense. Like, obviously, socialized healthcare isn't going to solve every problem, but I think it's like a net positive in the long run, right? I think it helps, as opposed to the current system we have in the States where, like, if you don't have health care at all, you're fucked, right? Like, if you have cancer, but you don't have health care, it's just like, well, tough shit, you're going to die. Like, I think having any level of care is better than having no care at all. I don't know, dude.
Okay, I mean, I don't really.
I know that you
whatever.
feel differently than the facts, and you can have your feelings, but the studies
Dude,
are
you
pretty
literally
clear.
just send me peer-reviewed articles that have less than like 200 people, and you call it fact. Unfortunately, that's not reality. I know, like, the internet wants to tell you if you find any peer-reviewed article that it's legitimate, but here I am trying to show you peer-reviewed articles.
Like earlier, she Naomi asked Kelly, she said, okay, if you have a problem with my sample size, then what do you think is an appropriate sample size? And Kelly didn't answer that. She just kind of like dodged the question. So like, why don't you tell her then? Okay, you don't think my study has a big enough sample size. Tell me what an appropriate sample size is, right? But she didn't answer that. And again, we're talking about a community of people, trans people, that is a very small community. So you're not going to have like super crazy high numbers to vet your study. Like it's going to be smaller numbers than like studies for like other things. I don't know. It just, I think her arguments are very bad faith at the moment.
That say the opposite of what you're saying, but you don't want to hear me.
Not at all. I've been listening.
You
to
just
what
want to believe the peer-reviewed articles that support
what your peer-reviewed article said.
Believe.
What your peer-reviewed article said is that more people are identifying as trans, more people are coming out, and more people are accessing gender-affirming healthcare. I don't disagree with any of that.
Well,
I think that is a fact. And hold up. The reason why that's happening is because more people are able to safely come out as trans. You haven't presented any evidence that it's not because more people are able to safely come out as trans.
You also said that like less than 1% of people end up detransitioning, right? 2 recent studies have suggested that as many as 20 to 30% of patients may discontinue hormone treatment within a few years.
Can you give me
and
those
that's from
citations?
the World Professional Association for Transgender Health.
Can you give me those citations? Because I think I might know the ones that you're talking about, and they're not very good studies on like assessing the actual detransition rate.
They're peer reviewed. It's from the British Medical Journal. You're going to tell me they're
I'm asking for the citation on those studies, not the original citation.
Absolutely. How can I send that to you? Without like
you can like give me the link in Discord. I think it's going to be referencing the one English study that had a like crazy weird and small sample size and conflated detransition and regret in some strange ways, as well as the military study, which has a lot of...
Reese Frog in the chat says some people stop HRT because they get to the point where they are comfortable. That, I'll be honest, I wasn't aware of. Like, so there are some people who transition that they don't necessarily take HRT forever. Just once they get to a level of comfort, then they just discontinue like HRT usage. Okay, I actually was not aware of that. Interesting.
Methodological flaws in terms of like how you would actually assess detransition.
So why is it when I bring up a peer-reviewed article, you can just say, oh...
I would assume that's kind of similar to how, like, you know, some trans people never get the surgery, right? Like, some people are perfectly fine not having top or bottom surgery. Like, it's just, you know, people have different levels of what they... what kind of treatment they take, what kind of gender affirming care they take to reach the level of comfort that they desire, right? I don't know if like I'm using like if I'm making sense, but like basically like some people will not get the surgery, but they'll take HRT. And so like I think that it's very similar to what like you're saying, where like some people will have lifelong usage of HRT, whereas others they might not, right? Is that... Or like there's also people who are trans that like maybe they won't do any kind of like medically induced treatment, but they'll do like the social stuff, like, you know, basically like let's say a male to female, they dress female, but they won't necessarily do HRT or they won't necessarily get top or bottom surgery. Is that kind of like the same sort of thing, or am I like way off base there?
It's not legit. But then everyone in my comments, when I say that your peer-reviewed articles aren't legit, everyone can just say, oh, I'm spreading misinformation.
Well, I know
you not spreading
I know the studies that
right
you're
now?
referring to, and they don't...
Because I'm someone who like, obviously like I'm supportive of like the trans community. But at the same time, like I'm still learning. Like I'm not the know-all be-all source of this stuff. I'm still very much learning. So that's interesting to me. Like I said, I was aware of people who choose not to get the surgery, and I was also aware of people who don't seek any medical treatment at all. They might just, you know, like take on the social stuff, like dressing differently and stuff like that. I was not aware that there are people who might start HRT, but they won't continue to take HRT. Once they reach, as you refer to it, as a level of comfort, they may discontinue HRT, but that's not necessarily detransitioning. That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Don't really prove the claim that you think they prove, because you really haven't read the...
Yeah, absolutely. It's differently for everyone. Okay, so you taught me something that I wasn't aware of. Thank you to Reese the Frog in the chat for sharing that. It's a Spectrum Bro. being on the spectrum yourself, I thought you would have already known that wrecked. Are you suggesting that I'm autistic, Carl? Is that what you're saying?
I have AUTISM, autism.
Bro, I thought you loved me. No, just kidding.
Those studies have you.
I haven't read, dude, that was a literal quote I just read to you.
I'm saying you haven't read the studies that it's citing. Like, I'm aware of the studies
have
that's
read
citing.
them.
That's a
It's
misuse
really
of those
frustrating to
citations.
me that you keep telling me I'm not reading these things when I literally, you can ask my boyfriend. I've been literally been feeling like I'm back in high school.
No, I thought I was quite explicit. Jesus, Carl, I love you, buddy. Hey, you know what? It's okay. Like, I don't think I'm autistic. I've had thoughts in the past, admittedly, because like, you know, looking back at like my childhood and stuff, I observe things about my childhood where I'm like, maybe I was autistic, but I've just never cared enough to actually get like a diagnosis. So maybe there is a bit of me being on the spectrum there, and I just don't know it. But like I said, I just don't care enough to have the test done to be diagnosed. But I don't know. Maybe there's something there. I'm feeling good at the moment. Being my last vid performed well. So I'm on a silly high. Yo, I saw that. Like, you had just uploaded that video, and it had crazy high views. Good for you, buddy.
Well, I've been like reading so many articles and like trying to understand. Like, I really take offense to that because that's such BS.
So I'm pretty sure I know the citations you're talking about, and they don't
Can I
really
give it
prove
to
the
you
claim
now?
you think they said. Yeah, I've been asking for it
Can
the
I give
entire
it to you
time.
now? Yeah, if you actually listen to me, I was going to say it's a really small link, so I could literally just tell you.
Bro, what is this like if you actually listen to me? You've been talking over the Naomi numerous occasions throughout this entire debate, and then like she'll ask you questions or she'll ask you for source, and you either don't provide the source or you don't answer the question. Like, we never, as I referenced before, we never got an answer to her like sample size question. You criticized the sample size of her study, and she said, what is an appropriate sample size? And you never gave an answer for that. You never gave an answer for that. And in previous like statements, you claimed to have studies and like you didn't give it. So like, what is this like? If you have studies, then give them to her so she can take a look at them.
Please give me the link.
www.bmj.com/content/380.
Why is she reading out a URL and not just giving her the URL? You're on Discord. You could literally type the URL in the chat. Okay.
/bmj.p382.
Okay. And so the claim that 2 recent studies suggest that as many as 20 to 30% of patients discontinue hormone treatment. That's citations number 10 and 11. Let me go ahead and grab the... So have you read the citations 10 and 11 themselves, or did you just read like the BMJ article?
I read a majority of it, and yeah.
Did you
I mean,
read
I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Did you read the citations which it cited to know like why they're saying it's like 20 to 30%? Or did you just trust the one article?
Do I need the citations to know why they're saying that? It's from the British Medical Journal. Do I need to do that?
Yeah, it's a pretty bad invocation of those citations.
Really? So explain how.
So one of the studies, I believe, was the English study that had a very weird and small sample, which essentially what they did was they conflated anybody.
Like a lot of your studies?
They conflated
like a lot of yours that you've brought
It was
up?
a sample of like 20, if I remember correctly, which is way smaller. Which is
study
way
of,
smaller.
Like 50 people, dude.
I gave you studies that had 89 and 104
Some of
people,
them.
not 50. But what I was saying was that what that study did, which is really dishonest, is that they conflated anybody who stopped taking hormones as a detransitioner. And when I actually read...
Yeah, so that's exactly what Reese was referring to, right? That there are people who might discontinue like HRT, but they're still trans, like they're not detransitioning, right? They've just, according to like the way Reese put it in the chat, they've reached their comfort level with hormones and then they discontinued using hormones any further, but they're still very much like trans, right? So like Naomi's making the same argument. So round of applause for Naomi catching that as well.
Read the study, what I found is that I think it was half or more than half of these people they count as detransitioners were people who they were non-binary and they only wanted to be on hormones for a couple of years because they wanted to obtain like androgynous bodies and sex characteristics. And that was actually their intended treatment path, was that they wanted to be on hormones for a couple of years and discontinue them. So counting them as like detransitioners or people who regretted their transition is pretty flawed in nature. The other study
Yeah, it's a bad faith argument, right? They're still trans, but they just don't take HRT anymore.
that it cites,
Why is that flawed in nature? Explain to me why that's flawed.
because they don't regret.
Carl says, as a semi-bodybuilder, I can confirm that pinning isn't pleasant and convenient, so I understand people stopping it. Okay. Interesting.
Transitioning. They just only want to be on hormones for a couple of years.
So do you not think that proves that some kids jump into transition, or even adults, without realizing that?
No.
Or taking the time to make sure and go to therapy because of the easy access
No,
to
that doesn't
HRT?
prove that at all.
No, they wanted this. They wanted to have androgynous bodies because they were non-binary. Like that was their desired outcome.
Yikes.
What's wrong with that?
I just don't agree with it. I don't know.
You just don't agree with somebody that wants to have like an androgynous non-binary body?
Do you really think that's mentally healthy, that someone wants to be something in between male and female?
Yeah.
Sorry, just give me one.
I mean, if somebody's doing that doesn't suffer from gender dysphoria, then I'd say, yeah, that's probably not good, right? But if you're legitimately suffering from gender dysphoria, I don't understand why that's problematic. Right? I don't know.
Yeah, there are like intersex people. Plenty of intersex people live happy, healthy, perfectly dignified lives and love their intersex bodies, for example.
Yeah, because that's not okay though.
It's perfectly okay. Plenty of intersex conditions don't impact life expectancy in any kind of negative way. What's wrong with being intersex?
But you know it's not normal, right? Like even we're not normal, but at least we try to fit in the binary. Do you really think people like that are mentally sane?
Yeah. Wait.
In
Were you trying to say? Were you trying to say that I might be offensive to the intersex community? I mean, you're practically dehumanizing intersex people at this point.
Oh boy.
Intersex people are not the same thing as non-binary because they're born that way.
I never said that.
Non-binary people.
You asked me if it's like mentally healthy to live like in between the sexes, for example, and I said yes.
It's not.
For example,
it's not right.
There are why is it not right? There are plenty of intersex people who live happy, healthy lives in between the sexes.
See, this is where we come back to that thing called common sense. You know, obviously someone wanting to be something in between is just a lot.
You don't have she doesn't have an actual argument, right? So she doesn't have an actual argument, so she's just like, yo, common sense though. Common sense though, dog. Like, what the fuck? Oh shit. Oh my god, it's so funny.
Logical, it's not natural. We're not natural, but at least we're attempting to fit in the binary to at least seem natural in society. These people are, it feels like you're trying to disrupt society, like you're trying to make everyone want to be genderless, which frankly I think is a huge concern.
I mean,
especially for our children. And the fact that you said my 7-year-old cousin isn't a problem for identifying as non-binary, dude, that is just so out of line. Like, why do you want children messing with their pronouns? They're kids.
Yeah, because kids can express themselves how they want, and as long as they're not harming anyone, there's literally no problem. Just like how
but
intersex
you're harming
people.
Their mental health.
Can I finish?
You're trying
hold
to
on. I let you finish. Can
identity.
I please finish? I gave you some real time to speak. So
it,
lots of people are perfectly comfortable being non-binary or being intersex. Just because something isn't normal doesn't mean it's wrong or bad. That's like the ad populum logical fallacy. For example, so people who are rich are not normal. That doesn't intrinsically mean that being rich is bad. So just saying because non-binary people or intersex people are out of the normal doesn't prove that it's wrong or bad. And your appeal to
you
common
did not
sense
just compare
feelings,
money to gender identity.
I'm showing you why the ad populum fallacy doesn't work. Your entire argument is just the ad populum logical fallacy. That being normal,
I know, just
not
your
being normal is
comparisons
wrong.
Sometimes are just so crazy because
So
that's just not a
I
good
have
comparison
general,
at all.
logical, moral principles, and then I apply them universally across scenarios because my morals and beliefs are consistent and logical. And I hope that yours would be the same too.
I don't
for the
think
money, you
non-binary
fucking
people
simp.
are logical.
Thank you.
I think
Reese
they
the Frog
are
/
illogical.
Ms. Indulgence.
What's
I
wrong?
don't-
£4.20.
Thank you.
Let's blaze. I think we all need to take a hit limo.
Oh my god. Thank you very much for the super chat. I do appreciate it. I'll take a hit for you of my vape. How about that?
I
Being
think that like if
non-binary.
you're transgender, you transition to male or you transition to female and you try to fit in the binary and you try to blend into society and you want to try to pass. That's what it means to be transgender. That's what it meant to be trans before 2014. And now it's just become entirely something else.
So what's
and
wrong with
clearly
being
it's affecting the
non-binary?
children really negatively.
So like, wait, what's wrong with being non-binary?
So I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, I don't think anyone should go to jail for identifying as non-binary, but that doesn't change the fact that I just think it's illogical.
Okay, well, you're allowed to feel how you want, but like why do you take issue with
I'm
non-binary
illogical,
people?
right? But can I just explain, like, for me and my transition, I'm able to like blend into society. Like, I love the way I look. I'm not like trying to disrupt society. To me, non-binary people feel like they're going out of their way to just be different, and they're not even making a transition. And then on top of that, they're almost like taking away what it means to be trans to me, because now non-binary people want to call themselves trans, and half of them don't even make any sort of transition.
Okay,
It's
well,
just so
you're
like,
allowed
borderline offensive to me.
You're allowed to do what you want, and you're also like allowed to like reclaim the term transsexual if you want to specifically talk about the lived experiences of people who medically transition. But I just don't see why you should like gatekeep non-binary people's existence, or be like, no, it's wrong for you to identify as non-binary if you're like, for example, 7 years old.
But like when people look at, like, I feel like the
what's
goal of
wrong
every
with
trans
that?
person should be passed. Like, when people look at me, they see a woman. No one's going to look at a non-binary person and be like, oh, they're non-binary.
You'd be
Like,
surprised.
you're not trying to
There's
like
some pretty,
be anything.
There's
You're
some pretty
just like transitioning a
Hold
pronoun.
up. There's some pretty androgynous non-binary people out there that when I see them, I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm gonna go with a they them to be safe.
That's because you're a leftist.
Have you seen
Okay.
Naomi TikTok?
So like once again,
Not
like,
everyone's
what's
like you.
wrong with somebody who is like 7 years old, figuring out that they're non-binary and identifying as non-binary? What's wrong with that?
Because you're corrupting a child.
How does
You're
that
putting
corrupt
it.
a
Why
child?
why does a child need to know what non-binary is? They've never needed to know what this is in all of history. Now we need to do this.
Well, we do have
What's
studies.
going to happen if my 7-year-old cousin decides, oh, TikTok's telling me that I'm allowed to go on HRT whenever I want. Why don't I take some testosterone since I'm using he, him pronouns?
Well, they're
What's
going to have
going to
to
happen then?
They're going
and
to
then
have
they
to
get
talk.
to be like 14, 15, and all of a sudden they regret their decisions.
They're
and they
going
have a
to have
masculine
to-
body. Like, that's cool.
They're going to have to talk to doctors and psychiatrists undergoing months and years of consultation and therapy.
Mhm.
I mean, the WPATH standards for accessing puberty blockers, not even cross-sex hormones, just puberty blockers, requires 6 months of gender therapy in order to access that treatment, which is
That's what I was talking about earlier. Like, a lot of the people who like present these like arguments act like you can literally just walk into a doctor's office and be like, I'm trans, give me HRT. And it literally doesn't work that way. There's literally a process that takes place with lots of like, therapy and whatnot to get to a proper diagnosis of gender dysphoria before HRT is even granted to you. Like, they act like it's like the equivalent, the medical equivalent of going into like a convenience store and buying a Coke. Like, you just do it, right? And it doesn't work that way. You need a proper diagnosis in order to even get to the point where you're even considered for HRT.
largely reversible. That is the WPATH standards. Yeah.
It is extremely easy. Okay, I was asking because in my experience, and I've talked to I've had 3 different therapists in my life. I've had 1 psychiatrist in my life, and all of them, and they were highly reviewed. It was so easy to convince them I was trans, to convince them I needed to go on HRT. And I've heard this from other trans people too. Now it's actually even easier
because
than
you're
when I was
trans.
trans.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're actually trans, if you're actually suffering from gender dysphoria, then yeah, you would answer all the questions in a way that would make them determine that, yeah, it does look like you suffer from gender dysphoria, so I'm going to diagnose you with gender dysphoria, and you're going to get given the proper treatment for your gender dysphoria. Like, of course you would view it as easy because the diagnosis was correct for you. Right?
And I have people just going to Planned Parenthood now without even going to a therapist, and they can get HRT. I literally know a
So
friend.
that's
I don't
adults.
want to say his name, but he transitioned to male and got testosterone.
You're conflating
at Planned Parenthood.
There's a problem. You're conflating adults with children. Adults can access HRT through informed consent in the US, that's true, but children can't. Children have to go through consultation and therapy before they can even access puberty blockers, let alone cross-sex hormones.
And I just told you that literally within 3 therapy sessions, I was starting the process of HRT. It is not that difficult. These therapists want to make you think you're trans. I swear to God.
Well, that's because
Like
you
you're
are
acting
trans.
like it's like, oh, it's so hard to go to a therapist. And
Like, what even is this argument? Like, I feel like I think I would somewhat understand Kelly's argument if she was a detransitioner, right? Like, if she was making these same arguments as a detransitioner, then it would make more sense to me. But she's not a detransitioner. She's happily trans. She's still trans, right? So, like, these arguments are just very, very weird.
This is so bizarre.
convince them you're trans. Like, you know very well it's not that difficult to get access to HRT.
As an adult, no, but as a child, you do need to go through
I
consultation
was
and
15
therapy.
years old. I was
Uh-huh.
15. Actually, I was 14 when I was in therapy before HRT.
Yeah, showing that you went to therapy over at least 6 months, right?
I think, no, it was literally after my third session.
How often were you having sessions?
I think it was like once a week. I don't know, something like that.
So I don't know if they were like not following the WPATH standards, but the WPATH standards require 6 months of gender therapy and
Right.
a persistent gender dysphoria diagnosis.
Mhm.
And I mean,
And even
look,
so,
I
let's
want
just
to be
like play
clear.
that card
If
too.
there
Let's
if
even
there
just use
are
that
if
logic.
there are ways that we can do better diagnostic screening criteria, I'm all for that. But
Right.
banning people from transitioning as minors is not even going to allow us to do the research that's going to help us improve outcomes.
So I also wanted to get on that topic because something that really, probably the thing that bothered me the most about your video is that you said puberty blockers don't cause sterilization, or that they're not likely to. I think that is literally just false.
Okay, so you do know that my claim is that if somebody takes puberty blockers for like a year or two, and then they go off puberty blockers, they are able to regain fertility, typically within about a year. Obviously, if you like
Look
go on to
at
take cross-sex
Gigi.
hormones,
That's
you're going to be...
not true.
She went on to take cross-sex hormones. She didn't stop the puberty blockers to undergo her endogenous puberty.
That's not what Gigi said in her video. I watched the whole thing that she completely came off of HRT, just coming off of estrogen.
Hold up, that's not what I
and her
said.
staying on the T blockers.
Kelly,
There's no
Kelly,
way
that's
she
not what I
produces
said.
sperm.
Kelly, that's not what I
Okay.
said. She went on HRT. I'm talking about somebody who just goes on puberty blockers. Do you have any evidence,
Told by
any
my
kind of
doctors.
like... Hold up, I'm not finished. Do you have any kind of like evidence or peer-reviewed study which would show that somebody who's only gone on puberty blockers and then gone off just the puberty blockers, resuming their natal puberty, is now rendered permanently infertile at like a statistically significant rate?
Yeah, I do. And you know that because I already provided you that evidence. I literally put it in a reply on Twitter and you saw it. It's literally on the
what was the
company
rate?
website. When you go to the website for Lupron, it is literally in the side effects that this can cause permanent infertility.
I remember reading it said it can. What's the rate of that?
And it's and the longer you're on it, at least according to my doctors, and I had 2 of them working with me who were...
Yeah, like drugs have side effects, right? Like there are potential side effects that you could suffer from different use of different medications or medical treatments. But that doesn't mean that everybody's going to experience that. Or that doesn't mean that we should discontinue the use of these treatments just because a small percentage of people may experience these side effects. Like, again, what is this argument? Like, you can make this same argument for like any drug. And at that point, because side effects exist, should we not take any drug that exists on the market that has side effects, which is pretty much every drug on the market? Like, this is preposterous. It's fucking insane.
Really, that was all they did. They were specifically in like an HRT department in Portland, Maine. They knew what they were talking about. And I was told, I don't know if your experience is spiral.
Somebody in the chat said recent frogs are literally all types of birth control. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
For lactone. But I was told the longer you're
Not
on
even just birth
Lupron,
control. You could literally use
if
any
it's
drug
more
as an
than a year,
example.
by year 2, you're going to be even more likely to not be able to produce healthy sperm when you come off of it. So
An animal in the chat says can cause does not mean will cause. Exactly.
if I started taking that at 15 and I decided I wasn't the type of person who wanted to get the surgery and I was like 25 and I was like, oh, I'm ready to have a kid. And I was told all my life by the leftist community that like Lupron's fine. And it's just all the side effects are reversible. I come off it. I go to a bank just like Gigi's doing, right? Because Gigi thought the same thing. She believed what you said. She thought, I'll come off the blockers. I'll be able to go and get a healthy sample.
Gigi's not a case of what we're talking about because Gigi was on
now
HRT.
she's probably not going to be able to have a biological kid because you're spreading misinformation like that.
Kelly, Gigi's not the kind of case that I'm talking about because Gigi went on HRT. I'm asking you, what is the rate at which somebody who's only been on puberty blockers is rendered permanently infertile because of those puberty blockers.
See, it's another bad faith argument because like Naomi's talking about puberty blockers and Kelly's talking about a case that involves HRT, not puberty blockers. It's not the same thing.
From my understanding, from what I've seen, hold up. I've let you talk a lot. Please let me finish. From what I've seen in the peer-reviewed academic literature, it seems to be the case that it is one of those exceptionally rare side effects, which, you know how like every medicine is going to have this gigantic long list of extremely rare side effects? I mean, even medicine like Tylenol say that it can cause liver disease, for example.
Yep.
That's one of those exceptionally rare side effects, and I have not seen any study which shows that this is like a statistically significant, huge concern for somebody who's just on puberty blockers. But now, if you want to talk about, hold up. If you want to talk about
that cause infertility, not estrogen.
It typically would be the suppression of like the natal sex hormone, which would make you infertile.
Right. So why are you acting like estrogen's even at play here? What does it matter if someone's on estrogen or not?
Well, because that means they're going to continue.
Infertility is the blockers.
You do know that estrogen suppresses testosterone too, right? Well, anyways, what I'm talking about is
not enough to a degree to cause infertility. You know that.
It certainly does if you do like estrogen monotherapy, for example.
Leia, I hope I pronounced that correctly in the chat. One of the possible side effects of antidepressants is suicidal ideation. Should people not take antidepressants? Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, just because something is a potential side effect doesn't mean you shouldn't administer that treatment, right? Obviously, like, the people who are doing the research on these drugs are like taking into account, like, yes, this could happen, but like, is there a higher percentage of people who benefit from these drugs as opposed to don't? Okay, yes, the percentage is much higher. Therefore, we are going to prescribe people these medications, or we are going to administer these kind of treatments to them, right? So like this notion that we shouldn't do something because there are side effects that can happen is just silly. Like, you would literally, at that point, you would literally take every drug off the market in existence because, well, this can have this negative effect, so we don't want to prescribe it to anyone. And that's nonsense, right? You're literally taking care away from people that could be extremely beneficial to them just because, oh, we noticed a very, very small percentage of people had this negative side effect, so you're going to be deprived of this treatment. No, it doesn't make sense.
There are protocols which do this. I'm on estrogen monotherapy, for example.
That little blocker will, but Lupron
okay, hold up. It's if you're on these hormones continuously that you'll be rendered infertile while you're on the hormones. And if you go off the hormones, then there's a chance you're going to be rendered permanently infertile. From what I've seen about puberty blockers alone, it seems the chance of being rendered permanently infertile from puberty blockers alone is exceptionally rare. But I want to be clear. I do care about the fertility of trans people, and I think that we can have improved consultation and screening and access to fertility counseling, and even gender clinics providing fertility banking as a service on the spot. I'm all for these kind of pushes for better education and opportunities to access fertility banking. But because you just keep saying...
Absolutely not. Why not? Why would you not want people to have better access to that stuff? So we're talking about, like, you know, in some cases, like if it's a female to male, like sometimes they'll do where like they'll freeze their eggs and save their eggs so that if later in life they want to have a child, they can do like what's it called? When you get like a surrogate parent or something like that. I forget the term, but basically, like, you know what I'm talking about. So you could freeze the eggs, or like if you're going male to female, you can like basically like freeze your sperm and like store your sperm. Like, these are things that are available, but it's not available to like everyone, right? It's like a cost prohibitive type of thing. So like, why would you be against like more people having access to that? Yes, I was just saying that, Tipster. They gave that to me as an option. Nice. Surrogacy, IVF. In vitro fertilization. Yes, that's what it was. Thank you to Emmy in the chat. Which that was a suggestion for like me and my wife. Because for those of you guys who don't know, my wife has muscular dystrophy. So there are concerns about how like childbirth would like affect her. So like getting a surrogate was something that was presented to us as a possible option. Because, you know, I wouldn't want to put my wife's life in harm's way just for us to have a child, right? So Yeah, even for us, that was a potential option. You mean surrogacy pregnancy? Yeah, exactly.
Saying shut it all down. You can't even provide this fertility banking for trans teenagers.
You didn't even give me a source. You just said, "Oh, I've reviewed a peer-reviewed article that says that puberty blockers alone don't cause infertility, even though the website says it does."
Do you want some
but
sources?
whatever.
I gave you that peer-reviewed source, which I know you didn't read.
Which peer-reviewed source? Give me the title, because I have them all right here. I have all my comments.
Yeah, the one from The Lancet, titled "The Importance of Informed Fertility Counseling for Trans Young People." I mean, the source I cited literally says in the title that fertility counseling for trans people is important. And
see, I'm so glad I have this written down because I wouldn't know this. But literally, that thing you're claiming was 1% of trans people regret having bottom surgery. Half of our community that identifies as trans doesn't even want to get the surgery anymore.
Kelly,
that was such like a shady thing for you to do.
That's not the study I'm talking about.
Intentional.
Kelly, you're talking about a different study. I'm talking about the Lancet
importance
article.
of informed fertility counseling for trans young people.
Right, that had nothing to do with bottom surgery.
Maybe I just have this in the wrong place, but I'm pretty sure. Give me a
That
second.
was the
Let me
that
click
was
on
the
this
one that was the one where you said, and I quote, "And if you don't believe me, you want to believe this article. I don't know if this article is about spironolactone. I don't know." The article doesn't mention spironolactone anywhere, but you would have known that if you read the article, right?
I apologize. I put that in the wrong spot. I thought it was under a different tab.
Also, you questioning the legitimacy of the Lancet of all journals is quite something. The Lancet is literally.
I just think it's quite something that you're pretending like you after one article, you're like, "Oh, I don't have any evidence that says Lupron alone will cause this, but Lupron with estrogen, that's a different thing." But then you're telling me that estrogen.
The idea is that you're on this for like
a tiny amount of testosterone.
The
then
idea.
You're like, oh, and that might cause it, but not the Lupron that's going to block pretty much all of your
Allow me to explain. You seem confused. The idea is that
I'm really not.
Hold on, let me explain. The idea is that if somebody continuously medically transitions, yeah, that's typically going to render them infertile. Although we do have some studies on people going off of cross-sex hormones and becoming fertile again. There was a study which came out of a fertility clinic which specifically saw a group of trans women that went off their estrogen to try to regain fertility. And out of the sample of trans women they had, every single one was able to regain fertility. But just the fact that
how big was that sample?
It was a sample of 9. So obviously, like, that's a pretty small sample. But I mean, this idea that even cross-sex hormones is just going to always permanently render somebody infertile, not proven in the medical literature. But what I'm claiming is that puberty blockers alone,
because it's on the website.
What I'm claiming is that puberty blockers alone, in the overwhelming majority of cases, do not render somebody permanently infertile, and you don't have any evidence to prove otherwise.
And neither do you. You don't have any evidence to dispute the claim I had on the official website. You having one article that says that is not and you know what the thing is? Even if it was like as low as like 5%, or if it was like, oh, like, you know, you can't even be, it doesn't even matter. A child should not be able to take that risk. A child shouldn't be transitioning genders. Why are you acting like the percentage even matters?
So I think
you like the shift of the goalpost there. It's like, okay, I'm clearly not I'm clearly losing this argument. Like, I'm not gonna win this argument because the arguments I'm making and the sources that I'm using are not good enough. So rather than like actually try to make like a valid argument in defense of my position, I'm just gonna shift the goalpost to, but the kids though, right? Like, oh my God, Jesus.
I think that ultimately this comes down to like a risk-benefit analysis. But if you would have read the article that I sent you and looked at the citation of the medical article it's referring to, it literally states...
I did read the article you sent me.
It literally states that if you're on puberty blockers...
I'm not going to...
And you stop taking... Can I finish? If you're on puberty blockers...
false claim.
Please allow me to read from this peer-reviewed study. It claims...
Okay, then stop making false claims when I've already told you that didn't happen.
I'm reading from peer-reviewed studies, and it claims that if you're on puberty blockers...
she's provided sources to back up everything she said, and so many of the statements that you've made, your response was, but common sense, though. So, like, what are you talking about? I don't know.
You can shut the fuck up, bitch!
And you stop taking them, your endogenous puberty will resume. That gonadal function is promptly restored, and reproductive potential appears normal in young adulthood. I have another peer-reviewed study I can give you. I have another peer-reviewed study I can give you that says in cases where puberty blockers are used, individuals must cease therapy for up to 1 year in order to resume the production of sperm. If you're only on puberty blockers and you stop taking them for just about a year, you're able to regain fertility in the overwhelming majority of cases. This is what
right,
the
and you
science
think it's
shows.
completely different when estrogen is involved.
Well, if you have estrogen involved and you're going to continually take estrogen, then that's going to continually suppress your fertility. But if
So
you
that
stop
little
taking,
bit of extra
if you stop
suppression
taking the
is
estrogen,
gonna-
then you often,
Dude, you don't let me
then
speak.
you
You
often
just talk
can
over
become
people. You
fertile
just want to
again.
read every
What do you-
study and then be like,
What do you mean? Don't let me speak. You've been talking over her throughout the majority of this fucking like debate. How are you gonna like? You won't let me speak. You won't shut up. Jesus.
Shut up, bitch!
you're like, oh, this is fact because it's peer reviewed. Can you have a friggin' conversation?
That's what I'm trying to do, but you're not letting me
You're
talk.
not though. You're trying to talk over me. You're not trying to
What?
let me speak.
I was down to let you speak, but you seem to be
Bro, she pulled the Bo Blacks. Let me speak. Let me speak. Oh my god, she's been talking over her the whole time, but she's the one that's complaining about let me speak.
Let me speak!
You can shut the fuck up, bitch!
very intent on talking over me.
You've
Yup.
talking over me like 5 times, but okay.
What?
Have you seen this Naomi?
Okay, and you've talked over me way more than 5 times. But if you'd like to know what happens if you continually take estrogen, yeah, it's going to render you infertile in most cases while you're taking the estrogen. And what it seems to be the case is if you go off the estrogen, then you are likely to be able to become fertile again. Although, you know, the evidence on that is still pretty limited.
So why are you messing with the fertility of children?
Well, I believe that we should give them access to fertility counseling and banking before they start on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. That way it's not really a concern.
Maybe we shouldn't be like messing with children's gender.
Or we can just like give them access to fertility banking and then follow evidence-based medical guidelines, which are shown to improve their lives.
I don't know why you're so hyper-focused on wanting kids to transition so bad. Like, it's kind of scary.
Because it improves their mental health and their overall well-being, and this is what's shown.
It's like she's trying to like toe the line of like the grooming argument, which I've always thought is like super silly because like nobody's talking about let's like encourage kids to like become trans. Like people are providing support to kids that like are genuinely like trans, like they've gotten a proper diagnosis for gender dysphoria, and they're like all about providing those like kids like support for that. But nobody's like, unless it's like a very small group of people who are like literally insane, like nobody's like actually saying let's take a perfectly like non-trans kid, like a kid who's not suffering from gender dysphoria, and let's convince them that they're trans so that they're transitioned. It's not what's happening. It just makes the whole grooming argument very, very silly, right? I don't know.
You're
In the
saying that
medical
based off
literature?
of some peer-reviewed articles, which you can't even really confirm or accurate. You just say, "Oh, it's a legitimate website. It's a real study, so I believe it."
Well, I look
You
at
just think
I
this
look at the
world is
study
perfect, don't
and I
you?
actually read the whole study and I understand what's going on in the data, and I take a holistic approach to science where I think that you need to look at the entire overwhelming body of peer-reviewed evidence in tandem. Because obviously, any study you read is going to have weaknesses, it's going to have limitations. But when we find the exact same result again and again and again, study after study, with different factors, with different sample sizes, with different variables, time and time again, all point to the same study, in the systematic literature reviews, which we have systematic literature reviews spanning dozens and hundreds of studies on medical transition, and they find overwhelmingly this exact same result time and time again, that medical transition improves the lives of trans people and trans youth, then yeah, that starts to be pretty convincing.
You know, you're the type of person that's so good at using big words to like make yourself sound super smart.
So
And
I
it's
guess,
like
like-
the reality is, regardless of all these BS studies, which a lot of the conclusions are
Dude, it kind of seems like Kelly has reached this point where like, okay, I'm losing this battle. So rather than engaging in the conversation now, I'm just going to troll, right? Am I the only one that sees it that way?
We do a little trolling. It's called we do a little trolling.
I don't know. Like it's very bizarre.
based off of very little data in my
Raikubi says Kelly is coping. True.
You are coping and seething. You just can't accept what you're seeing. Yes, you're coping and seething. The truth it is scalding, and now you are molding and coping so hard.
That is indeed a pretty big fucking cope.
Opinion. You're talking about putting children on puberty blockers and messing with their gender. To me, it seems predatory and not okay.
So I guess like what kind of data
Regardless of your statistics?
I'm asking. I
we
guess
should
I'm
not
curious.
be putting hormone blockers on children.
I'm really curious. What kind of like data or evidence would you need to see to show
I don't need data
that
or evidence to know that
something
we
is
shouldn't be
helpful?
forcing kids, or that we shouldn't be allowing children who sometimes think they're Superman or whatever their imagination thinks they are. We shouldn't be giving them the option to change genders.
Well, we can actually
That's what I
collect
think.
evidence on these things and see if whether or not something helps somebody.
There's no
And we
evidence to
do-
be talked about.
there
You want to
is
change the
evidence to be
genders
talked
of
about.
children. That is sick.
That's why we're not talking about like if a kid was like, hey, like I'm a girl, and they're just like saying I'm a girl. We're talking about like kids who are receiving a proper diagnosis of gender dysphoria. They're going through all the appropriate diagnostics and like therapy to confirm the diagnosis of gender dysphoria before giving them gender affirming care. Right? We're not talking about a kid who's just like in imaginary la la land and is like, yeah, I'm a girl now. Like that's not what we're talking about at all. Like, what?
That is
So
sick.
there is apparently the evidence is enough for the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's
Like she's acting like it's one of those cases of like, I'll use myself as an example, okay? She's acting like it's a case of like, yo, like this little boy, because like I remember times when I would play like with my cousin and my sister, and like obviously like they're girls, so they had Barbie dolls, and like sometimes I would want to play with them, so I would play with the fucking Barbie dolls with them and shit, right? They're acting like, yo, this kid is playing with like, you know, Barbie dolls, we should give them HRT, and it's like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. Like there's a whole process that comes to a proper diagnosis before that even starts.
It seems to be enough for every
Like
major
when I
medical
bring up my
institution.
sources with my
It
statistics,
seems to be enough.
when I bring up
It's-
associations
hold
that
up,
don't agree
let me
with you.
finish. Let me finish. The evidence seems to be enough.
But never let me
for
respond. You just
every-
want to talk
I
for
will let
15
you
minutes,
respond.
then
Just
let me
allow me
talk
to
for
finish.
5.
It seems that the evidence is enough for literally every major medical institution. So why isn't it enough for you?
Okay, so I have my info. The director of the CEBMA, which is the Belgian Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, Dr. Patrick, hard to pronounce last name, Van Kroosleven, has joined the growing list of experts criticizing the gender-affirming care approach for minors with gender dysphoria,
So
simply
one
because they
doctor?
don't think it's evidence-based. So if we go on to what they said,
You're not even listening to what I'm saying. You're just citing one single doctor. I'm not citing just
giving me
one
all
single
these-
doctor.
No, can I
I'm
finish?
citing
Can I
the
finish?
overwhelming.
If you're going to talk, let me finish now.
Oh my god.
It's because you're bringing up all your points and being like, see, scientific after
Dude, she
peer-reviewed
pulled
article, like,
she pulled the let me speak again. She's been talking over Naomi this whole fucking time, and I gotta applaud Naomi. She's had like the utmost level of patience with Kelly up to this point. Like, dude, like, let me speak when you've literally been speaking over Naomi this whole fucking time.
all these things are saying the same thing. And then when I bring my peer-reviewed articles, you always have something to say, oh, that one's not accurate. It's so hypocritical, dude.
Your citation is just a single doctor talking about their opinion.
No,
I
it's
think
not
that
a
the
single doctor. My
overwhelming
statement
body
was that he
of
just
evidence
he went on
matters a
list
lot
of
more
a growing
than
list
what one
of
doctor
experts.
says.
Doctor, it's a growing list of experts. Guys, I don't have the full list here to read every doctor's name for you. Does that mean
So
it's
is
not
that-
right?
What like percentage of like doctors and scientists does that group make up? Because as far as I know, it is the extreme minority, and there's a
Right.
reason for that. Just like the extreme minorities of doctors are anti-vax because vaccines work. The extreme minority of doctors are anti-trans because
I just feel like if you
transition
can
works
bring
for
up all
trans
your
kids.
peer-reviewed articles, you've let me say one of my peer-reviewed articles. Like, can I bring up another one? There was another doctor, Christina Olson, who
Yeah, you're just
performed
citing
studies
one
on
doctor
trans
again.
youth. Let me continue because it's more than one doctor. So Dr. Christina Olson, who performed studies on trans youth, she claimed that there were minimal differences in anxiety, depression, and self-worth compared to biological children after these kids transitioned, right? So they reanalyzed this data, and it showed transgender children supported by their parents had lower than average scores on anxiety and self-worth compared to biological children. So they're
Biological
claiming
children?
that this should be a warning to everyone that not to accept all research at a surface level. And unfortunately, a lot of your studies are very surface level.
So how are they surface level?
Because all the points I made in that video I posted last night,
Fuck.
all of that. Did you
So,
watch it?
I did watch it. If I recall,
Carl Jobs in the chat says she doesn't understand what a study is. Yeah, I mean, it really comes off that way, honestly.
the first point you had was that the first study, you didn't like that 60% was the amount to experience remission from depression, even though 60% is better than the best antidepressant on the market. And the other thing you didn't
Because
like...
you're comparing it to antidepressants, which isn't a good comparison at all,
because
because
we're
those are
talking
shit
about...
too.
Okay, I know that you just don't like medicine in general, but allow me to continue. So
I know you like medicating the American public when they don't need it.
The other question you had about the study was you wanted to see what it would look like with like a longer follow-up, how the kids feel like 10 or 15 years down the line. And that's exactly why I cited the other study as well, because the other study was conducted on adults, referring to their usage of puberty blockers as children, and would have contained adults up to...
And YT Mom says, thanks for being my long content today. Yeah, no problem. I'm really liking this, starting like the Sunday streams early, so I can stream like for an extended period of time, because normally like I can only stream for like 3 hours, 4 hours tops during like my work week. But I think if we do these like Sunday streams early in the morning like this, like we can do these like extended streams moving forward. I'm really liking this. Thanks for the feedback.
To 25 years down the line since their treatment with puberty blockers. So that second study I cited does include long-term samples.
I found out that where they did a lot of that study was at like trans activist events. Do you really think people who detransitioned are going to be there?
That study came from the trans survey, which also had a sample of detransitioners in it.
Okay.
That's just the facts about the trans survey.
Why would they be interviewing detransitioners in the first place for a study like that?
Because they want to collect data on detransitioners as well as trans people.
But the question is literally, are you happy with your transition? Obviously, detransitioners are not happy with their transition.
Right. And
Carl Jobs in the chat says, Tipster, come on, bro. In June, we get pissed on stream. Just accept it's happening. In June, we get pissed on stream. Am I missing something? I don't know. I don't know what that's in relation to.
They said that in the study.
Okay.
And actually, if you want to look at the data on detransitioners from the trans study, it was the overwhelming majority of people who reported a detransition was not due to any internal factors like being trans was not right for them. It was overwhelmingly a temporary
Piss means drunk on stream. I mean, I've done drinking streams before, although I've stopped them. I talked about a while back, like, you know, how I've had like issues with like alcoholism and stuff. And so I've really cut back on the drinking. Like I can have a casual drink now and it's totally fine. But yeah, when it comes to like the drinking streams and stuff like that, I don't really do that shit anymore. Like, I suppose it could be like a one-off thing where every once in a blue moon, like we can do one for fun, maybe to like celebrate like something or something. But it's definitely not something that I do on the regular anymore. Don't be a bad influence, Carl.
Transition due to external social pressures, like lacking the funding for their hormones or lacking family support or support from their friends and peers. Like once again, showing this exact same trend that, that detransition is exceptionally rare. And it's often the case due to external social pressures, not due to somebody internally realizing.
Which, by the way, speaking of that, I saw some people on Twitter yesterday. I posted some pictures of like, I was having a couple drinks with like my sister and my brother-in-law. Like we had some beer. Like I had a Bud Light, basically. I had a couple Bud Lights. And like everybody was like, yo, this is the guy that said he had an alcohol problem. Like, why is he like drinking or whatever? It's like, I can have a casual like drink and it's not like a problem, right? The issue isn't me having a casual drink like a beer or two from time to time, or even taking like a few shots to like celebrate something or on like a special occasion or something. My issue that I had was that I had like mental health issues that rather than seeking treatment for those mental health issues, I was medicating myself, self-medicating with alcohol. I was like numbing my pain with alcohol. I'm not doing that anymore. Now I'm seeking like therapy, you know, I'm medicated for my anxiety issues and stuff like that. And so I'm no longer like self-medicating, you know, with alcohol. That was my issue. My issue isn't that I can't drink at all, or I'm going to like slip into like fucking alcoholism. No, like my problem is I was using alcohol to treat a problem that needed proper treatment for mental health issues. That's where my issue's at, right? Anyway, let's continue.
realizing that they were wrong about their gender identity?
So I don't agree. I think it's kind of BS that like all of my peer-reviewed articles just aren't accurate or they're not logical, but yours all are. It's kind
the
of
citations in
one-sided.
your peer-reviewed articles is
Right. There's
one
always a
doc. Hold up,
citation
hold up,
that's
hold
wrong
up.
with my peer-reviewed
What your peer-reviewed articles
right?
are referring to is one doctor said
Guys,
this.
I didn't go through
and
on
then
your
what?
citations.
Hold
and
up,
try
hold
to-
up,
to
hold up,
find
hold up.
something
Let
to
me
debunk
finish.
them.
Let me finish.
Dude, you can
What
only
your
do this
peer-reviewed
on. You're not
articles-
a good debater. You
what
know
your
why? Because you
peer-reviewed-
can only debate on evidence.
Why is she not a good debater? Because she's fucking destroying you? I think that's why she thinks she's not a good debater, because she's getting fucking annihilated right now.
That's like scientific. You can't have a talk about transgenderism.
Like, I'll be honest, I'm not a good debater, especially when it comes to political topics, right? Like, when it comes to that kind of thing, like, I don't think I would be a good debater. There's certain things that I think I do okay in debate in, but when it comes to political topics, I think I'll get fucking annihilated. But, like, to call Naomi a bad debater when she's, like, making factual statements and providing sources to back up those statements, and you're providing lol common sense. Like, I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound like a bad debater to me. And major props to Naomi for doing such a bang up job while also remaining extremely patient with somebody who's being extremely unreasonable. Major props.
In a common sense way.
I mean, we
you
can
can't
certainly
do it,
talk.
can you?
I mean, we can certainly talk about trans people in the abstract sense.
Like, is
but
there
you
a
weren't
person
able
in
to
there, or
hold
is
up,
it
hold
just
up.
a robot that
When
like
we were talking
says
about being
specific
trans in the abstract sense, you weren't really able to give me any kind of concrete reason why, for example, a kid
I gave you
identifying as
plenty of reasons,
non-binary
and you
is
just said
harmful
the
in any
studies
way.
weren't accurate.
Hold
I
up.
gave you plenty of reasons.
Wait, that's not
and
what
you
I'm talking.
Bro, she pulled the let me speak meme earlier. And she's literally, right now, as we see, she's like speaking over Naomi again. You can never, ever, ever pull the let me speak card when this is the kind of shit that you do during a debate.
Talking about. That's not what Kelly, you're not even listening. What I said is when
studies.
Kelly, you're not listening to me. What I said was when we try to talk about
I
things
really
in the
am.
abstract, can you listen? What did I just say?
Oh my God, dude.
An animal in the chat says the thing is Naomi literally explained earlier why her sources were good, and it wasn't only because peer reviewed. Kelly was literally has literally just said her sources were peer reviewed, and that was it. Yeah, exactly.
Dude, what did I just say?
So you were interrupting me to say that, like, you were talking about, I'm just referring to studies and evidence, and you want to have a conversation about transgenderism logically. So what did I say?
I meant after I said that part, the part when we were talking over each other. What was I saying?
I just gave you what you said. Can you tell me what I
No,
said?
the part that when we were, obviously that was before we started interrupting each other.
That was the part
I'll give you
that you
that though.
said
That
last.
was good. That was slick of you.
Yeah, you don't know what I said because you weren't listening, Kelly. But please allow me to
That wasn't what I said
explain.
when we were talking over each other. I wanted to know what I said when you were talking over me.
What did you say?
Apparently you don't know.
Okay, so please allow me to explain what I was saying, and if you can listen, then we can have that conversation. So you wanted to talk about things in like the abstract sense. When we were talking about things in the abstract sense, you couldn't give me any reason why a kid identifying as non-binary is harmful, like any concrete reason.
Because we should stick to kids knowing that there's men and women because that's what most people are. We shouldn't be making the majority of the world transgender.
Why not?
Because it's not normal.
That's the ad
Do you
populum
think
fallacy.
it's a good thing? Dude, I'm transgender, and at least I can admit that this isn't like, it's not fun to be transgender. Anyone that's trans, if they're actually trans, would do anything to be born cis. Or I don't even want to say cis. A biological woman.
I disagree with that, but I guess like
I
your
don't think
entire
you're really
argument,
trans then.
your
I don't
entire
think you're really
argument,
trans then.
your entire
If you
argument.
enjoy being trans, you're an attention seeker.
Okay,
What?
whatever. Your entire argument is just the ad populum fallacy. This appeal to whatever is normal is like right. Is that correct?
Because man
Thanks for the
and
money, you
woman
fucking
are
simp.
right.
Thank
there
you.
are
Like
two
you be.
genders.
Do you
My
believe-
hands. Kelly logic. You aren't a good debater because it's not what I like to hear in my echo chamber and my facts are common sense, so just trust me, bro.
Yeah, it really does seem like that. It really does seem like that. I'm going to take a quick break, chat. I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. But I will be right back, so don't go anywhere. All right, let's continue.
Talking about.
Do you believe that whatever is normal is morally right and correct?
Like the majority of people.
Okay, so if we go back like a couple hundred years, it was pretty normal to own slaves. Is that right or correct?
God, why are we talking about slavery?
Because
Oh, this is okay. This is okay. Chat. I had mentioned at the start of this stream, I was like, yo, this debate kind of goes off the rails, okay? It starts out with like a debate on trans issues, and then it somehow turns into Kelly like kind of defending slavery, and it's fucking wild, chat. Listen to this shit, all right? Listen to this.
if we go back like a couple hundred years, it was pretty normal to own slaves. Is that right or correct?
God, why are we talking about slavery?
Because I'm showing you why the ad populum fallacy is a logical fallacy.
Honestly, back then, a lot of Black people participated in the slave trade themselves. So,
What?
Yeah, that doesn't make slavery right. Are you trying to defend
It was a-
slavery?
Yeah, I feel like, okay, my history's not great, so I could be totally wrong about this, right? But I feel like a lot of the, Black people that participated in the slave trade, they were doing so for like the purpose of their own survival, right? Like they either had like slave owners who like were telling them that they needed to participate in that, or they were doing so that they can I guess have some kind of like personal benefits, so their own slavery was not as bad as like other people's. Like it was a survival mechanism, basically. Doesn't mean that slavery is okay, but it was like a survival mechanism, right? Am I remembering that correctly? Because again, I haven't done history in like fucking forever, but like, does that sound about right?
product of the time, dude. It
Are
was
you
a
trying to
product of the
defend
time.
slavery?
Did you not see Matt Walsh's new video on this topic?
Oh God.
I did, and I think that defending slavery is fucking cringe as hell.
Yeah, I would agree.
Defending slavery, but I think we're illogical if we didn't realize that a lot of Black people enjoyed being slaves.
What? 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 Oh shit! Oh shit! What? Did she? Okay, I know I've already listened to this, but even listening to it again, like, she didn't just say that. Can I run that back? Did she just say that? Did she just say that some Black people enjoyed being slaves? Chat is what?
Fucking cringe as hell.
Yeah.
Defending slavery, but I think we're illogical if we didn't realize that a lot of Black people enjoyed being slaves.
Oh my God! Like, how does she come to that conclusion? Like, did she get a fucking DeLorean time machine and travel back in time and ask Black people, like, hey, do you like being slaves? And they're like, yeah, sure, it's not so bad. Like, how did she come to that conclusion?
Back when slavery was a thing.
How do you know that Black people enjoyed being slaves?
Right?
I mean, it's just in history. I've like read about like a lot of Black people not only participated in capturing slaves, but a lot of Black people enjoyed being slaves. Because of course, when you're
Really?
brought up doing something like being a slave your whole life, it's all you know. I'm sure a lot of slaves probably enjoyed it.
I mean, making the best of a bad situation is not the equivalent of, hey, I like being in this bad situation. That is such a bad faith argument. That doesn't, like, okay, I grew up in a home where like we didn't have a lot of money. Like we weren't very well off or whatever. Like we had to like grind to like make ends meet, and we didn't always have like the nicest things or whatever, but we did what we had to do to get by. We made the best of a bad situation, right? So because like someone who is a slave might make the best of a bad situation, it doesn't mean that they like that bad situation, that they actually enjoyed it. What?
And we're happy because that's the only lifestyle they were aware of.
That's
Can
crazy.
you not like?
Yeah,
can
they're
you not
making
think like that. Like
they're making it's exactly what I said. They're making the best of a bad situation. Making the best of a bad situation does not equate to they enjoy being in that bad situation. That's like a cancer patient, right? Like obviously like they have to go through like chemotherapy and all that shit that sucks, but they're still like, they're strong enough to continue the fight. They're going to continue to live their life to the best of their ability. They don't like the cards they've been dealt. They don't like the fact that they have to, go through all this cancer treatment and shit like that, but they're making the best of a bad situation. That's essentially what she's referring to. Slaves who made the best of a bad situation. But making the best of a bad situation does not equate to, hey, yeah, slavery, I loved it. It was great. What the fuck?
You can shut the fuck up, bitch.
Holy shit. Victor Burns in the chat says she has come out about this and said she misspoke. What she meant to say was some slaves lived in comfort, but because it's all they know, they enjoyed their situation more than worse off slaves. Like, I get that, but still, like, it's a really, really weird way of positioning it.
Like, is it really that dense?
I have
of you?
never
Like, I
heard
don't
of
know.
somebody enjoying having to work.
If I'm being honest, like, I don't even think that clarification makes it a whole lot better. If I'm being honest, I don't know.
Work countless hours on a plantation, being dehumanized and whipped and told they're not human, and being beaten within an inch of their life, and being raped.
I'm not saying that's
I don't think that
okay.
people
I'm just
enjoyed
saying
that.
you can't deny the fact that there were probably slave owners that, just like there were really bad ones, there were probably slave owners that probably treated their slaves really nice too, right? Like, you're not thinking logically. You're being so dense.
So
Right, but because there were less bad because there may have potentially been slave owners that weren't as bad as other slave owners. Like, it doesn't overall make slavery like an okay thing, right? I don't know, dude.
I'm just gonna say that in general, I think it's wrong to own humans.
Of course, we're not in that time period anymore.
But you're defending slavery.
Victor Burns in the chat said I did say that was an overall bad take, to be honest. Okay, yeah, fair. I didn't see that. My apologies.
I'm not defending it. I'm saying it was a product of the time.
You said that black people enjoy being slaves.
I think there were probably a good majority of black people who back then were born and raised as slaves, probably because that's the only thing they knew. It was the environment they grew up in. If they had a slave owner who treated them well, they probably enjoyed their lives, a few of them.
No, I think that they made the best of a bad decision. I think that's the case, all right? I don't think they enjoyed being slaves. I think that they would more than likely rather be free to live their own lives like the way they chose, but they made the best of a bad decision, or like not a bad decision, a bad position, right? That's not, dude.
I think it's illogical to believe that every person who was a slave back then hated their life. I truly think that's illogical.
Oh my God.
I do.
What is this argument?
I'm pretty sure that being owned is not a good thing.
What is this argument?
Because you grew up in this generation and this is what you've been taught, and we know these things now.
No,
but back then,
not just because
those societal standards were not created yet.
Not just because I grew up in this generation, but because I can think logically and morally on this topic, and why it is unfair to own another human based off of their birth as having like a certain skin color, for example. That's unfair.
I'm pretending
and
like I'm saying it's
illogical.
okay to own slaves now, because that's not what I'm insinuating.
You are defending slavery.
I'm not defending it. I'm just giving you the facts. Aren't you all about facts over feelings?
Yeah, and I believe that slavery is immoral.
I mean, whether she intended it for it to be a defense of slavery or not, like there are times when you might say something that is a defense of something, even though that's not your intention. Like, I feel like this is in some way it is a defense of it, or at bare minimum, it's a subtle justification to it. And that may not be her intentions with the statements she was making, but it still can be interpreted that way, right?
Right, and I do too. But the fact was, back then, I think you're illogical if you think that some of them didn't enjoy being slaves or enjoy their lives.
Oh my God.
Why would anyone enjoy being a slave?
Right?
That's the environment you grew up in. That's all you've ever known. So if you grew up in that environment and you...
That doesn't... Because it's all you've ever known, it doesn't mean you enjoy it. Like, I'm so like, this is so nuts to me. This is so nuts to me.
Have a slave owner who treats you well, that's just all they know. So they probably were happy about it. They didn't know freedom. Why is it so hard for you to understand this?
What does like a slave owner treating their slave well look like?
I mean, back then, I'm sure some of them, I'm pretty sure they fed them, right? Or probably that like they weren't whipping anybody or like not tormenting anyone. Just like, I don't have like specific details for you.
Okay. So as long as they're like, as long as you're working inhumane hours on plantations, but you're being fed, then that's a good thing.
Again, I'm not saying slavery was a good thing. You're not gonna like try to make it seem like that's what I'm saying, because okay. I don't know what you want me to say. If you want to believe that every person back then who was a slave hated their life, go for it.
Okay, so I guess like I'm just trying to illustrate why the ad populum fallacy is a logical fallacy. Just because something is normal does not mean that it's morally right, for example.
Right.
Do you understand why the ad populum fallacy is a logical
And that's
fallacy?
I saw Victor in the chat saying he didn't understand why the conversation shifted to that. That's why she was making a comparison to show that just because something's normal, like, doesn't mean that it's like okay or whatever, or it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying everything that isn't normal is bad. I don't think gay people are bad. I think
Okay.
people are born naturally
Excuse
gay,
me.
and that's
So,
the majority.
if-
And I think there's a huge difference between being gay and attraction and then gender identity.
Okay, excellent. So now that you recognize that it's not a valid argument to say that being gay or being whatever is bad just because it's not normal, then
But
why
I
is
think
it
most of the time,
then why is it bad?
especially when we make up less than like 5% of the population, whereas gay people are probably a lot more. And you're not like like the difference between someone being gay versus being trans and me having the desire to have bottom surgery, like get my genitalia flipped inside out. Like, can you not see the difference in like mental sanity there?
So there's
Like,
obviously
like you
differences
realize
between
like that's different,
there's
right?
obviously differences between trans and gay.
Okay, so obviously we got to the point of the debate that I wanted to take a look at with you guys, but yeah, like, holy smokes, that is one insane fucking debate. I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen this debate already, I would highly recommend checking out the rest of it. I'm going to go ahead and link it in the chat where you guys can check it out, because Jesus, that is like pretty nuts. And like eventually like it gets to the point where like Kelly is like making an argument about like how Naomi doesn't pass or whatever, but which I think she passes based on like what I can see, right? But like it just kind of comes off as her kind of being petty and like trying to like make an insult or something. I don't know. The whole debate is just fucking wild. Highly recommend checking out the rest of it. But round of applause to Naomi for handling herself so well in this debate.